Hi everyone, welcome in. My name is Jonathon Silva. This is our Learn with the Nerds for our class today that we are going to go ahead and look at how we can bridge all of our amazing Excel skills into Power BI. Now the focus of today's class again is so we can leverage all of our existing knowledge from Excel, migrate into Power BI and see how we can pull in everything together. Now this 3-hour session that we have today is live and we have a lot packed into this session. So I do want to make sure that everyone knows that I can see some items there in the chat that people are trying to download the class files to be able to get in and follow along. And that's absolutely great if you'd like to do that. But because we are rather limited on time as far as our 3-hour block here, I want to tell everybody and make sure everybody knows that we're not going to be able to really slow down if you're having any issues, you have any additional questions on certain things along the way, because there's just so much for us to pack in. Now, with that being said, this is being recorded. So if you want to come back afterwards, you can pause, you can slow me down, you can speed me up, you can get your subtitles, all that good stuff as you revisit this session later on. So I do want to encourage you to come back later on after this live piece is done, and we can go ahead and make sure everybody has access to everything along the way. Also, before we go ahead and get started, I did want to make sure to let everybody know that we are currently running an amazing special on our on-demand learning platform. We actually have a 50% off special going for all attendees for this event today. So if you would like to go ahead and do that, go ahead and navigate over to our website there, training at Pragmatic Works or learning at pragmaticworkstraining.com to be able to sign up and use that 50% discount. I do believe that Anthony and Julia are helping me out with the chat today. So hopefully they're able to throw in that link there for everybody to be able to get access to it. All right. So let's get right into our class. Now, as we start off today, I just wanted to kind of do a quick little brief background into who I am, what I do here for Pragmatic Works. Again, I am a trainer here at Pragmatic Works. We are located in the Jacksonville, Florida area, so it's usually nice and sunny during this time period. It's actually quite cold today. We're in the high 30s, low 40s this morning when I woke up, so used to the 60s and 70s. It's a little bit chilly outside today. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, which just generally means that I've gone through all the hoops and everything for Microsoft to be able to train on their products, on their platform, to be able to give out different training methods there. I also specialize in the Power Platform, which is part of just all the Microsoft ecosystem. In the Power Platform, we're talking about Power BI, Power Apps, Power Virtual Agent, and Power Automate. All four of those together, the 4 legs of the Power Platform. And of course, Excel is a major part of all 4 of those. Now, a little bit about myself as a background. I am a former educator. I was actually a high school teacher for roughly 10 years, primarily in the DC metro area, but also down here in Florida, where I spent most of my time teaching a lot of those advanced level AP, IB. I even taught a lot of the Cambridge Academy, the A-level courses for economics and mostly European and world history. So with that, I like to keep that background, that education background in mind for all the training opportunities that I'm involved with to really help everybody get a good foundation for the topics that we're going to be going through. Less of click here, do that, but more of why are we doing things? How can we do things? Maybe some of the best tips and tricks and practices along the way. Now for this class today, for this session that we are doing together today, the general agenda of what we are going to be covering throughout the 3 hours together is, as you can see on the screen there. Okay, we're going to start with just simply understanding Excel and the Power Query editor that lives in Excel. By the way, also lives in Power BI, and we'll showcase that a little bit as well. And so with that understanding, what can we do with the Power Query editor, some of the different things, options that we have with there, and then how we can use that and leverage that into PowerPivot, which is the data model that lives in the back end of Excel. And then from there, with that PowerPivot data model that we are going to build, we'll then look at how we can migrate that data model into Power BI, and how we can use and leverage the amazing visual tools inside of Power BI to build out a report and to be able to take that report and then send it out to be able to share and publish out on the Power BI service. And so we'll see how we can use Excel and Power BI together at the Power BI service to be able to share out all the amazing work that we do to others either within our organization or outside of our organization. And then finally, in our last bit together, we are going to come full circle. And we are going to take all of the work that we did to produce that final report in Power BI and publish it out back into Excel and showcase how we can, inside of Excel, leverage a Power BI data model, leverage the cube that we're going to be building automatically to be able to populate pivot tables, pivot charts, and other slicers and things inside of Excel, really taking everything, again, like I said, full circle from start to finish. So when we think about what we're doing in terms of business intelligence and data analytics, when we're looking to build out a report, right, to understand our data, to be able to have some type of action taken from it in the end, we go through a general process each time in order to get that final result. Now, when we think about the evolution of a report, we often start with just someone sitting behind a computer looking at the raw data and trying to figure out what that data means and how I can use that data to understand better things about either a problem my organization may have or how we can leverage our current data to better position us into the future. And so when we think about the evolution of a report, our first step is always to work with that raw data. And then what we're going to do today is look at how we can use that raw data, bring it into the Power Query Editor where we can get data no matter where it may live. Maybe it's on a SQL server, maybe it's in an Excel file itself, or on a web page, or in an Azure database, a data lake, or it may live in anywhere else that your data might live. You can bring into the Power Query Editor and apply some transforms on it. And then set that data up, cleanse it, set it up in a way that really makes sense for you and your organization to go ahead and to try to populate your reports from. And so from that step inside of the Power Query Editor, what we'll end up doing is we're going to build out a data model. And what our data model will do is it'll allow us to take queries or tables from multiple different data sources, wherever they may live, and to set up relationships between them. And those relationships between them allow them to communicate. And so we can populate a single visual, a table, a chart, maybe a map in Power BI or anything we want to build, a single visual all populated from multiple different data sources all at the same time. And so with that, we'll be able to really make some advanced calculations as well. And we'll look at our DAX, our data analysis expression language in Power BI later on, and how we can leverage that too. And then finally, when we have our data model all wrapped up, ready to go, we have some options. Do we want to create some visuals inside of Excel using our canvas? Do we want to create those pivot tables, pivot charts, and etc.? Or do we want to move to Power BI? And inside of Power BI, do we want to leverage some of the amazing modern visuals, those interactive visuals that many of us, if we don't know about, will come to absolutely love, and because they're just simply super easy to use and very, very detailed and structured in that way. Now, again, we are going to start our session together, really focusing on the Power Query Editor and the data model inside of Excel. And then when we leverage that, we'll then migrate over to Power BI afterwards. So again, when we think about the Power Query Editor for Excel, some of the things that we are capable of doing inside of that Power Query Editor are we can really take all of the data cleansing steps that you may do in your daily process with Excel, cut that time in half. Right? We're no longer needing to do cut, copy, and paste. We don't need to worry about adding in macros or any other type of formulas or functions inside of Excel to try to get the data all set up in those rows and columns that we all know that Excel is so powerful at doing for us. Inside of the Power Query Editor, leveraging the UI, the user interface, we can do all of those steps in the matter of clicks. A single click does everything for us. Another click will add a column or remove a column or do things that we may need inside of that Power Query. So we really allow the machine to do the work for us, set up a process for us. So in the future, when we want to come back to this, we don't have to do those steps ever again. We could just leverage all those existing steps, let them work for us, and we never have to worry about trying to repeat that process, that manual process again. Let the machine, let it all do it for us. And then for our data model, known as PowerPivot inside Excel, what we are able to do is we're able to, again, link together 2 or more tables that may exist in multiple different data sources. No matter where they are started, either in Access, again, or all the other data sources that we might be able to store our data in, we can pull them into the Power Query Editor. We can then use the data model or PowerPivot in Excel to leverage relationships between them. So they can communicate, they can go ahead and really populate single visuals. Now, the example that I have there on screen is we have customers, right? All of our organizations, our businesses, we all have customers. And for our customers, we might store our customer data on a separate Excel sheet or in a separate table somewhere. Just a list of names, addresses, birthdays, all those kind of good things, right? And then what we also have with our customers, we might have appointments with those customers. And we might have another sheet that has all of our appointments, our schedules for those appointments, how we can connect our customers to that. We also have contracts for those customers. Maybe that once we have a written up contract, we then have that stored somewhere else as a, hey, this is going to be something, an action taken, or it's already been done. Then we also have referrals, right? We have maybe our customers fill out a Google form or a Microsoft form for a referral to say, hey, these other people, we give a little incentive program or something with that. We store all those referrals somewhere else. We can actually take all of those different tables that are stored in a couple different places, make connections to all of them. And so we can now have one data model with our entire organization, our whole company, that we can leverage in order to really understand how well we are doing and how well we can better serve our customer base. And so that data model, when we think about what this data model can provide us, we like to think of our data model as a single version of the truth. The end goal for organizations that leverage the data model from Excel and Power BI is to have one for all of us, where we have an original author that looks at the raw data, that pulls through the data wherever it may live, goes through all the processes of building that into Power Query Editor and into our data model, sets up that data model for everybody in the organization to be able to leverage. And so that original author might want to create some reports from that, some visuals from that if they would like. But then others inside of the organization can also pull from that data model and make their own reports, make their own versions of that to be able to work for them. Maybe the original author worked in IT. Maybe they were in marketing. Maybe they worked in a different department. And each department now can leverage that single data model, that single version of the truth, to be able to pull in and populate their own reports on the data for the entire organization to work through. So it's a great way to have everybody know, hey, I want to know things about our company. I want to know things about our customers. We all go to the same central location. We pull the data that we need for our specific purposes, our specific reports, and then move on from there. And another great thing about this data model is we can also do everything in Excel. So if you are, you know what, I live in Excel. I'm in Excel all day, every day. That's what I use, or it's like top 3 every single day or every week. That's what I know best. That's where I live. I feel comfortable there. You can still do all that in Excel too. So you don't have to get out of your comfort zone. You could just start to add in some extra skills, some new tips, some new tricks along the way to really round out your skill base to, not just make your company work better, but make you work better too. And so then our evolution of the report from there, after we have all of our cleansing steps done, we've looked at our data model, we can then take a look at how we can migrate and start to build out some, really good tables or visuals or charts along the way to understand our data, to get a better feel of what that data is telling us and what we can do with it. So we can build out our pivot tables, our pivot charts. We can have our general tables in Excel. You know how we all like to color code and have all those things with those on a daily basis, right? But we can also go into Power BI. And going into Power BI is an amazing way for us to be able to really see some of these modern visuals that are out there for us, these interactive visuals, not just for us, but for anybody that else is going to use this report. Any of our end users, maybe if we're doing a presentation or anything along the way, that'll be able to view these reports, to be able to feel some interaction, to take some control over that data for themselves. And so when you think about like, why should we use Power BI? Because there may be a lot of us out there that just don't know what Power BI is. We're not very familiar with what Power BI can offer. Well, some of the great things about Power BI is, first of all, Power BI Desktop is free. It's a free download, right? All you need to do is search Power BI, say in any type of browser you may have, go to the website, download Power BI Desktop. Right? You'll need to eventually log in to create an account with either a work or school account for Microsoft. And then you can just go ahead and play around with Power BI. And you can start building out reports for yourself. You can really leverage everything for free right away. It's very simple to get started with. And then when we do that, we can start to build out some real-time dashboards and interactive reports once we publish that out to the Power BI service, which we'll showcase a little briefly today. Not too much because we're going to focus on the big picture here, but we can still see a little bit there today. What we're also going to be able to see is that inside of Power BI, we can leverage some of the natural language query and AI that is built in. Now, the AI that I'm talking about is we have an ability inside of Power BI to ask questions in just plain English or Spanish about the data. I want to see, you will simply type in all of my sales for Q3 2017 as a bar chart, and it will automatically populate that for you, so long as you had that data built into your data model. So it's a really great way for us, especially if we're new, to get started with understanding how to build out visuals, but also if we're developers, we're used to this, we've been doing this for a while, it's still another way to, hey, I'm not quite sure how to visualize this. This is what I want to see. Let's see if Power BI can go ahead and do it for me. Another great thing about Power BI is the full integration with Excel, because Power BI is built essentially like the younger cousin of Excel, PowerPoint, SharePoint, and Teams, where we can take our Power BI reports into all of those and be able to really work collaboratively with our others in our organization to be able to leverage all of the amazing data models and reports that we're building out. And then finally, why a lot of people come into Power BI are the visuals. We have these custom visuals and custom connectors that we can leverage inside of Power BI that are simply amazing. These visuals allow us to look at our data in ways that we have maybe never been able to think of before, where we can have just simply the graphic interface of this is it's mind-blowing the first time you look at it. And all of the custom visuals, we're looking at 250 plus. I'll tell you right now, it's probably upwards over 300 by this point. Custom visuals that we can bring in to our Power BI reports, either directly in the Power BI app itself, or by going to appsource.microsoft.com. And by looking at those custom visuals, we can leverage a lot of different ones available to us to be able to bring in to just showcase our data in so many different ways, and in ways that we want to see it just work best for us and for those inside of our organization. All right, so what we're going to do from this point on is we're just going to go straight through some demos, okay? The whole purpose of this is you want to see this actually worked out. You want to see this done in real time, right? So we're going to do a bunch of demos here today. Now, for these demos today, I'm going to start off by really focusing on Excel and the Power Query Editor inside of Excel. And then from that, the first set of little demos there, some of the new features, the really cool features of the Power Query Editor, I'm going to start to work on an end-to-end report, starting in Excel, going to Power BI, into the Power BI service, and then back into Excel. So as I mentioned as we started off this session here today, if you want to try to follow along, we have the student files there in the description for you. Go ahead and grab those, download those, try to follow along. However, I'm going to be moving at a decent clip, okay? So keep that in mind. I'm not going to be able to stop too much along the way simply because we are rather limited on time here. However, once again, this is being recorded. Right? This is a live session that is being recorded. You can come back to this later on. You can revisit as many times as you need. Pause me, stop me, rewind, fast forward, slow me down, speed me up, anything along the way there. You'll be able to do all that as you need to really be able to pull out this whole report. And I have some beginning and ending files in there as well set up so everybody should be able to really access everything that they may need. All right, so what we are going to do is I have a little bit of a timer there. Let me get rid of that timer. I'm going to open up Excel, okay? And here you have, this is Excel 2016, Okay, so inside of Excel, this is a very blank Excel workbook that all of us are very used to using. Okay, what we are going to do is we're going to jump right into leveraging the Power Query Editor. Now, the Power Query Editor, again, is this amazing ETL tool, extract, transform, load tool that we can use to leverage and bring in data inside of this Excel workbook to be able to transform, cleanse, do all those things that we might need to do to make that raw form just look and work a little bit better for us. Now, in order to do that, we are going to migrate over to our Data tab. Now, if I select the Data tab here at the top, what you'll notice here on the far left is we have our Get and Transform Data area. And we are going to leverage this right here. This is going to be the focus of how we can get into the Power Query Editor. Now, if I want to get to that, right, the first thing is, well, what do you need to do, right? You're going to pull something in order to leverage the Power Query Editor. You need to work with data. So let's go ahead and do our first little demo here. And the first demo that we are going to focus on is, say that for our organization, our company, we have an Excel file that we might be using on a weekly basis or say a quarterly or monthly basis along the way. And we have this same Excel file that we just create new versions of every week, every month, every quarter, every year, whatever it is, just to update maybe inventory or anything along the way. And so we may have, if you think about how we store this, 35, 40 versions of the same file with all the same columns, pretty much the same data, just the newest versions of that for the dates that we're looking at. And because we have all these files that are exactly the same, we often want to see all the data for like the entire quarter all at once. So what we need to do is usually we just copy and paste that data all into one workbook, have everything there, and then we can start to analyze all those tables together. All right? However, using the Power Query Editor, we can do that entire process and make it so much easier and so much faster than ever before. So I'm going to showcase how to do that here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Get Data. And here in Get Data is what I'm going to use in order to pull in multiple different Excel files all from one single folder. Because we're going to leverage that folder inside of the Power Query Editor to be able to pull every file in at once, combine all those files into one, and apply transformations on all those files all at once. So no longer do I need to do that same process over and over and over. I do it once and it's ready to go. And also, the best part about this is every time I do this, if I set this up once, anytime I get a new file, maybe for next week or next month or something, all I need to do is drop it into that folder. Every transform, every step that I've taken to clean those existing files up will automatically be applied to that new file as well. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to choose from File, and then I'm going to come down here and choose from Folder. Now we'll talk about, as we come through, all the different options here that we can bring into the Power Query Editor here in Excel, the different types of files and sources, locations as we get along the way. But we're going to start right here from Folder. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to point to the folder that my data is existing in. And what I've done is I've simply saved that same file location, the same folder onto my desktop just for a quick access here today. And I'm going to come into my data folder and I'm going to point to my international sales. And in my international sales, okay, I'm going to pull in all of this data, okay? And so when we look at our data here, okay, that we are going to be leveraging here inside of Excel, you can see, you'll notice that we have all of these files that are already set up, ready to go for us. Right? Everything's there for us. We don't have to worry about understanding anything from that point. Okay, we don't have to really bring in anything further. It's all set up, ready to go for us. Okay, all these files are all there. Now what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to close this out for a moment. I'm going to pull this once again because it looks like that file here. I'm going to go from our folder here. I'm going to open up that folder. That's actually the world sales one inside. I'm not sure I give me the full one, but we're going to do the world sales folder more specifically. And there we go, I'm going to open it up. And so we can see we have a couple different countries that we are selling to every year that we want to see the data for, okay? And so now here I have some options. So if you look here, we have a couple options at the bottom inside of the Power Query. We have transform data, we have load, and we have combine. Now remember, the end goal of what we want to do is we want to bring in all of these files. We want to combine them all into one and to be able to apply different transforms on them so we can have them all be able to showcase the data the exact format that we want to see. So what we're going to do is we want to transform and combine at the same time. Now, if I just hit transform, anytime you see that, what it'll do is it'll automatically open up the Power Query editor. Right now, if I just do transform, I'm going to see all of them separately. Don't really want that yet. If I hit load, what load does is it takes the file in its current way, whatever it's set up in currently, and it just simply loads it into an Excel, just the way it is. Now, when we think about the Power Query editor and working with reports, most of the time we're working with data that's just simply ugly. It's just not nice to work with. There's stuff all over the place. If you got it from a coworker, the way they set up their data might be different than the way that you like to see it in Excel. So sometimes you have to go through the process of cleaning it up. We're not going to use load because I want to make sure it works for me and makes sense to me. And so what we're going to then do is we're going to actually leverage combine here. And if I open up and hit this drop down for combine, what you'll notice is I have an option here to combine and transform. Put them together as one and go into the Power Query editor to do those transforms, which is exactly what we want to do. We can also combine and load into Excel or combine and load to. And I'll tell you in a little bit what load to means, but it's a quick hint preview there. It's going to talk about the data model that we absolutely want to leverage. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit combine and transform. And so what will now happen is I'm going to get a pop-up, a new window here. Okay, we have our preview here, roughly the first 20 rows or so of our data that we're pulling in, of the files that we're going to be using. And so with this, right now, you can see the sample file. It's just showing the first one for Australia, just coming in alphabetical order. If I wanted to, I can choose the other ones there as well. It's really up to me if I wanted to see which ones. But in this case, we're just going to see a quick one there, and I can go ahead and hit OK. And when I select OK, what it'll do is now going to get another pop-up window, which will give us the Power Query editor. Now here is the Power Query editor, this amazing ETL tool for us. And so the Power Query editor, it's a quick lay of the land, things that we're looking at. At the top here, we have just our area, right? This is our ribbons, our tabs, just things that we have, our options to be able to do things similar to what you're used to in Excel or any other Microsoft product. On the far left, I'm going to make sure I make this nice and big for us here. On the far left, we have our query pane. And this query pane is where we can see all of the different queries or tables in a list that we can go ahead and leverage, so we can go ahead and clean and play around with. Right now, we only have one. We have our world sales. Notice it's the same name as the folder that I chose to bring in and combine all that data from. Now, in the middle, we have our query preview area. Okay, so this preview area is where we can see the first 1,000 rows of every bit of data that we're looking at. Now, it's only showing us the first about 999 plus, really 1,000 rows of data here because the Power Query editor is memory intensive. Okay, it's going to work and try to store and compress a lot of data for us automatically. And because of that, it's going to use up a lot of memory. And because it does that, we don't want to bring in every single row. It's just going to slow down the process. It's really going to slow down our computer a lot. So what it does, it's going to look at the first 999,000 rows of data that we're looking at, apply all the changes we're doing that we can see and verify directly from that, but it also applies those changes to everything else just in the background. Now, if we want to make sure it's actually working and it's actually applying to the others, all we need to do is we can see on the right-hand side of each column, we have a little filter option. Okay, that drop down there gives us our filter. If you want to see the things that are happening for, say, row 35,700, right? Pick a random number. All you need to do is find out what might exist in that row and then filter down to the specific locations there. Okay, something to think about there. Then on the far right-hand side, inside of the Power Query editor, we have our query settings, right? It says it right there. And in the query settings, we have an area where we can rename or name our query, our table that we're working with. And we also have probably the most important place in the entire Power Query editor over here, our applied steps. Now, these applied steps, again, are the most important because they give us a detailed description of every single step, every single thing that was done in this query here on this table is listed in order from start down here at the bottom. So it goes in that sequential order there, in order there to let us know everything that we've done. Now in the Power Query Editor, there is no undo. There's no back button. There's no Control Z capability. It doesn't exist. However, the applied steps area is better, because if we ever make a mistake, if we ever do something like, I don't like that step, for some reason it just didn't work for me. Notice if I hover over, you get this little X on the far left of each of those steps. You can very simply delete that step right where it exists and start over. Or, what's even better, is if you see on the far right of those steps, you will see a little gear icon. And for those little gear icons, you can edit that current step right where it is. And any edits that you're doing to that step where they are will then be applied to every single step afterwards automatically. So if you're on step, say you're down here and you're in step 18, and you're like, oh, I made a mistake, I'm back on step 4, I don't want to have to redo the whole thing. You don't have to. Go back to step 4, edit that step here with the gear, and then come back down, and you'll notice all those changes are then applied all the way down through. So it's a really great way for us to be able to, very quickly make these changes and fix changes if we need to. All right, so that's our Power Query Editor, quick lay of the land. So what we're going to do with this table, with this query that we just brought in, is we're just do some basic transforms on it to just showcase some of the capabilities here. So the first thing we're going to do, okay, is we're going to take a look at some of the data types that exist inside of these columns. Now the data types are, you could tell, they're right here on the top left of each column. Okay, you can see the different data types available there. Okay, there's 4 of them. And what those data types tell you is what Power Query thinks is actually inside of that column itself. For our first one here, our source name, right now the data type, if I select that, I click that icon, is a text, which generally means Power Query has identified what's in that column. Those are characters, like alpha characters there. So it's a text type. Okay, if you come over to product ID, you will see product ID 1, 2, 3. There's a whole number. Okay, there you have it. It's now showing that you see their actual whole numbers there. Same thing for date. It's a date data type. Well, because the data in there, they're dates, right? They're identifying it. And if you come over here to revenue, you can see revenue is as a decimal number. Okay, it's identifying there's a decimal in there, right? It's doing a decent job of doing that. Now, if there's a data type that, I see that, but it's not really what I want to see, it's not the exact format that I want to see, you can go ahead and change it. Like for this one down the middle for zip. Now, a zip code is an identifier column, right? It's a geo column that we use in the United States and outside of the United States to identify like a specific location, geographic location. Now, because it's an identifier column, we are not really likely to ever do any type of aggregation to it, any type of sum, min, max, average, all those things that we do to our numbers, right? And because of that, we don't really want this zip to be a whole number. Here's an example. In the United States, if you live in the northeast of the United States, you are likely living in an area that has a 5-digit zip code, and the first digit of that zip code may be a 0. Now that leading 0 goes away when you have a data type as a whole number. Because if you think like the number 12, like 1, 2, well, really it's a 0, 1, 2, or a lot of zeros and then a 1, 2, then a decimal. Right? We don't need to see them because we know they're there, they're not necessary. But for a zip code, particularly if you have a leading 0 in a zip code, you need that, right? If you don't have that, you're not getting the right place. It's not working. So what we want to do on a lot of these identifier columns, like a zip code, sometimes like a product ID if you need, we're going to want to change the data type from a whole number to text. Okay, and then what we can do is we can choose what are we going to do with that step. Are we going to add a new one, or are we just going to change or replace the current step that was done there? And in this case, we're going to go ahead and replace that step. You notice that the ABC, right, we have our data type there for our text. It's now going to jump everything to the left-hand side. It's going to match over on our source name there as well. Okay, so here's the first one that we want to think about. Okay, the second thing is we have some columns here. Now, when we go ahead and build out a report in Power Query, and then we'll migrate over to our data model, Power BI and everything, we really want to limit the columns that we're using, right? We only want to keep the columns we know we want to use for the report, that we want to see. So what we want to do is a good practice, get rid of all the fluff, get rid of all the extra that you're not going to touch that you know you're not going to see, because it just takes up extra space. So what we're going to want to do is get rid of some columns that we don't care about. And the column in this case that I don't really need to see is this source name column, because we already have the name of the country. We don't need to know that it came from the source of the CSV file for Australia or for the other countries. You can see the filter. If you hit load more, you can see all of the files that we're looking at. Okay, we don't need to see those, so we can just go ahead and get rid of that. We already have that over there for our country. In order to get rid of a column, super simple. You can either hit remove column with that column selected. I'm a right-click kind of person. I like to have the access right there all in one spot. So if you right-click, you can just hit remove. And if you ever make a mistake, by the way, of removing a column you want to keep, guess what? You can come over here, delete that step, it's going to pop right back up. So it's a real quick way to see things. All right, so we've gone through some easy data cleansing steps here. Everything looks nice there, okay? What we could do is we could just go ahead and say, you know what, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to populate a visual. Let's go do that. So over here on our home tab on the far left, I can hit close and load. Close this out, load it in Excel. Let's make a table. Let's make a pivot table, pivot chart, something. So let's go do that. I'm going to hit that, get us back into Excel here. And what we'll see now is we have our queries and connections. And it's just going to load in all of the rows from that combined file that we've put all into one that we can be able to use to leverage in order to build out, our table, our chart, whatever we want to have. And so you can see all the rows that are coming in. We're now at 1.5 million, 1.6 million. If I hover over, I'm starting to see there's an issue. You can see that little red X there. Those of us that know Excel, there's some things happening that was not going to work, right? Something's going to break here in a second. And if you know Excel, you know why. It's because there it is. We have more data than actually can fit on an Excel worksheet. We have 2.99 million rows of data that we're trying to bring into Excel. And we know that Excel, you can't do that, right? That is not possible to do in Excel. We're limited to, I'm going to hover over here. I believe the limit is, and it says our limit, 1,048,000 rows. Okay, so what do? Do we just give up? No, of course not. We do something, we leverage something that allows us to bring in as many rows as we need. We leverage PowerPivot, the data model that exists here inside of Excel. And so when we send our data, our query here to the data model, we don't have that row limit. We are able to bring in millions and millions and millions of rows here in Excel to be able to leverage to make all of our charts that we want to see. So what I can do is I can choose right here. All I did was hover over our world sales there and choose to load to the data model. I can also, if I want to, right click on it and I can select load to right here. Anytime you see load to here inside of Excel, you should automatically think load to, like where? We're loading to the data model, okay, otherwise known as PowerPivot. So you could do it there. Also, if you wanted, you can select edit. Now, if I select edit, what will happen is the Power Query Editor pop-up window will open up again, and I can do everything back from there as well. So for this case, I'm just going to select load to. Now, when I hit load to, I now have an option like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to import this data into the data model? What are the ways I'm going to do it? What we want to do to make sure we're leveraging the data model properly is we are going to only create a connection. Right? We're only going to connect to it. We don't want the data actually to live on this workbook. It's actually going to live in Excel in the back end. Okay? We're not going to be able to see it here, only in the data model. So we're going to create a connection to that and then add this data to the data model. Okay? So everything's going to be pushed into there. And then I can hit OK. And so now what you'll see is we're going to go through the same process again on here on our world sales table, our query that we have. It's going to start to load in all of those rows again. But now what you'll notice is we are no longer going to get that pop-up of, hey, things didn't work. It's going to load through all the way, I believe it's what, 2,990,000? I'm choking over my words there. There it is. Okay. Start to look at relationships. Are there multiple tables? And look, we have a little confirmation. Things are good to go. And so now if I want to see all of that data, almost 3 million rows, all I need to do is here in our data tab, I can come over and select Manage Data Model. Now, if you do not have this option, this is from Excel 2016 and newer, and even if you have Excel 2016 and newer, and you don't see this, it might be because your screen is just, the resolution is a little bit smaller. So you may want to come over to the far right and hit a drop down here, and you will see the little green icon for that. That is an option. Or you have to go ahead and set it as an add-in. Okay, go through the process and add that in if you don't already see it. So just keep that in mind if that's not something you currently see. And then if I select Manage Data Model, what you'll see is another pop-up, right? Now what we're seeing is PowerPivot for Excel, but what you'll notice is we have every single row. You can see this is row 4, if I'm selecting row 4 there. If I come down here at the bottom, you'll notice I have row 4 of 2,990,000. Every single row is now available to us that we can now use to build out our columns, our pivot tables, our pivot charts, anything we want to see. Now I can verify that I have every single file in there. If I select this filter drop down, you can see all of them. And you'll notice how fast the data model is. It is nearly immediate. So if you want to leverage your data, millions and millions of rows at a very, very fast pace, you should use this data model here to be able to use all those all together at once. Now, before I mention, one of the great things about using this folder example is that, say next week we are adding, in this scenario here, we added another country that we're selling to. And we want to see all the data for that country here as well, so we can try to analyze, sales from Australia to Japan or to Nigeria or to Mexico or anything along the way. I want to see that specific country, and maybe I add in a new country here. Or for your sake, you might add in just next week's version of this Excel spreadsheet. All you need to do, and I'm going to showcase here, I'm going to open up that folder here that I have with my data. All you need to do is drop it into the folder. So what I have here is I have data for Canada. Okay, saying we are now, we're selling in Canada. We're going to try to expand our footprint up into Canada here. So I want to go ahead and get that data for Canada and add it to my full report. All I need to do, I'm going to select it and I'm going to drop it into World Sales. So now in my folder there, I have all of these countries, all of them, every file there. Now, if I want to see Canada as part of this data set, originally with Excel, I have to now copy and paste that, add it in, or do an append or anything along the way. I don't need to worry about it because I did all those processes, those transformations. All I hit is refresh. That's it. Let the work be done for you. It's going to go through the process here. It's going to first load in that entire folder into the Power Query Editor. It's going to look at all the steps already taken, apply all the new changes to any new files or any new rows that are in there, and then take that entire process that we did in the Power Query Editor and then load it here into the data model. And now you can see it's retrieving all these rows. We're actually more than we had before. Now we're over 3 million rows. And so if I close this, what you'll be able to see is now I can see there's Canada. If I want to verify that now Canada's in there as well, hit OK. We have all of Canada data. It's that quick. It's that easy. We don't have to worry about doing this over and over and over every single week, spending, Monday morning, like 9 a.m. I know I got to take last week's files, add them in, do copy and paste, get all this ready to go to be able to transfer out. Just hit refresh. Drop it in whenever you need, hit refresh, and look how quick that's done for you. Nice and easy. Everything's ready to go. Cool. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we'll just go through some other different ways that we can use the Power Query Editor, some other tips and tricks along the way that we can go ahead and do this. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to pull in more data. Okay, that's it. We're going to pull in more data from different sources, go through some transformation processes, and I'm going to showcase some of just simply the cooler ones, if I'm going to be honest with you. Just the cooler ones, the nicer ones, the faster ones, especially for those of us that do so much in Excel on a daily basis. And so for this next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load data. So I'm going to go ahead and get data again. And I'm going to choose, in this case, instead of a folder, I'm going to choose just another Excel workbook. Okay. I could choose here from a database. You could see we have our SQL databases here. We have Access that we could pull from, all the Azure databases that we can have, our blob storage, all those, right? You could pull from a Power BI data set, which we're going to showcase later, from an online service or even other services like from the web or other places. Okay, you can do all that from here as well. But again, for this one, I'm going to pull from an Excel workbook. So I'm going to select from workbook. And so now I'm going to go back into our data folder. And for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in this Excel workbook called body mass index. Now I'm going to go ahead and import that. And we'll get this preview window as we got before to see what we're pulling in from that workbook. Now for this file here on body mass index, what I've just done was I've collected data about the body mass index of many different countries, actually a lot of countries, over about a 25, 26 year period. Okay, actually I think it's a 28-year period. And all I want to be able to do is I want to see over time what is the average BMI, body mass index, for say United States for all that entire time period. Or maybe I want to see the entire global average in 1997. Or I want to just filter and see all of like North America, or for Africa, or for Asia, and be able to move those around to be able to see body mass index along that way, just for this specific example we're working with. So bringing in this file, I can do all of that. Now for this, you can see we have multiple different tabs that are located inside of this workbook. Okay, we have all these different tabs that have all different data on them. Some of them have null, some of them have other items that we brought in. Now, if I want to bring in multiple tabs from one workbook, what I could do is I can hit here, select multiple items, and then I can choose whichever ones I want or which ones I don't want. In this case, we are only going to bring in just one. Okay? Our data tab has pretty much all the metric data that we really want to focus on. And what you'll see here is a quick little preview of that data too. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select transform data. Again, I want to get into the Power Query editor to go ahead and cleanse up this data to make this actually work for me for whatever report that I want to be able to build. So if I hit transform data, we're now going to get, as we did before, the Power Query editor. And so we can see our new table has now been added along with the original table that we had before with all of our countries. And if I select the drop down here, again, you'll be able to see we have every single country we had before. Now, again, including Canada. There it is, the one we added in from that folder. All of it's there, still existing on here. And now we have our new one. So the first thing I like to do when I add in new queries or new tables here into the Power Query editor is make sure the name of that table or that query makes sense, actually makes sense for what I'm doing. In this case, this one's called data, which is a terrible name for a table or for a query, right? It doesn't really tell me data for what, right? It doesn't really give me a whole lot of information. So what I want to do is I want to rename this. So I'm going to come over here on the far right in our query settings, and I'm going to change the name from data, and I'm going to call this body, if I spell that right, body mass index, okay? And notice once I hit enter or click away from this area, that's also going to change the name over here where it says data. So hit enter very quickly. There it has body mass index. Pretty quick, pretty easy to do. Another nice little step for us to have. Okay, so the next thing is let's go ahead and cleanse this data to make sure it works well for our analysis purposes. So if we look at this data, this table that we're working with, we're at 200 rows. Honestly, that's not a whole lot. That's actually pretty small. We have 30 columns. If we scroll across the 30 columns, you can see we have just the column 9, 10, 11 at the top here, similar to what we might have in Excel. That might be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the letters across the top. And then our first row, we have what looks like actually is different years, right? We have 85, 86, 87, 88, 90, all the way across. And then we also have our countries here. And what looks is probably this is the body mass index for Afghanistan for 1980. Right, for Afghanistan for 1981, right? This is the way in Excel that most of us like to enter in data because it's easy to do this way, right? Data entry in this crosstab format is pretty easy. But the problem is if we're actually trying to understand the data for one specific country over time, say I want to see the average BMI for Australia for every single year in this data set. Well, for me to do that, I need to go ahead and find Australia for each column that it's here, add all those up, divide by the total, right? Then we're just adding in more math steps, right? What we want is to make this as easy as possible, right? I want to be able to do this fast. I want to be able to do this in one click because that just makes my life a lot easier, and why not make my life easier, right? So what we need to do is we need to set this up in a better format. And the format that we want to set this up is in a way that we can see the country, and then the year, and then the body mass index for that year. And then the country again, and the year, and the body mass index again. And I'll showcase that here with a quick little whiteboard. Okay. And so what we want is what we want in the end is really 3 columns, right? We want to have country, so let's say USA, right? Then we want to have, say, the years. I believe 1980 was the first one. And then we want to have the BMI. And it's probably in the US, we're probably in the mid, like 24.5. I don't know, just guessing. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to have all of USA listed together for every single year after that. So 1981, and then 1982, and then 1983, and so on and so forth. And then have the BMI for each of those years across. So if we want to filter, we say, I only want to see USA. All we're going to see is the data for USA. Or I only want to see 1981. Every country that has 1981, we're just going to see that, all of them for 1981. It'll be a lot easier to understand our data for analysis or reporting purposes. And so what we need to do is something called Unpivot. Now, in the past, you may have used transpose, right? Take our columns to rows, rows to columns, use transpose to get this. Now, in this case, using Unpivot, what we can do is we can set up exactly how we want this to work. When we use Unpivot, we take an original column, say for this one for our countries, and then we change the others. And so to showcase that, what I want to do is I'm going to just go ahead and show how to do it. Now, the first step here, on one of the issues we have, if you can see across the way, is we actually don't have the right column headers. All right, we can see our first row here is actually our column headers across the board. So we need to cleanse that up first. We need to go ahead and use the first row as headers right here. Or you can come into the little table icon in the corner there and use first row as headers. So now things are set up, ready to go, make it easy for us. And so what I'm going to do is select the column you want to keep. In this case, we want to keep the country column because that's how we want to see the data across. And then what I'll do is I'm going to right click on that column. And down here, I'm going to choose, instead of unpivot this column, I'm going to unpivot the other columns. And when I unpivot the other columns, all of my column headers, my years in this case, will become their own column. It'll be called attribute. Then all of the data inside of that for each year, each cell will go along the way, will then create its own new column called values. And so then we can see everything is set up in an amazing way for us to go ahead and do any type of analysis or report for it. So I'm going to choose Unpivot Other Columns. And watch how quickly, how easily that data is now set up for us to be able to go ahead and filter. So now if I want to, and I'm going to quickly change the title of our columns here by just doing a double click on the header there, we can see year and BMI. If I wanted to see the data only for, let's say, I'll pick any country in here, for Cambodia, right? So I'll just uncheck all these others and choose, say, Cambodia, and hit OK. Now, very easily, I'm just looking at the data for Cambodia. I can filter down. I can now just do an average of this column, and we're good to go. Or I can do it by year. I can clear out a filter here, clear that filter, and choose, maybe I want to see only for 1990, and hit OK. And now I see every country and the BMI for that country for 1990 only. So it's an amazing way for us to set up our data to go ahead and be in a way that we really want to have it for analysis, right? For a report that we want to build out, just to understand our data at a better level. Okay, so that was Unpivot. So now our next little mini example here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in another source, okay, another different source. And this other source is going to be another Excel workbook. And for this other source, the background of it is we're looking at some sales data, right? And the sales data here is going to be on some products that we might be selling and how we can set up our data on our products to really understand, where we are selling them better, how we may be able to better position ourselves in the future to sell these products maybe more or less or whatever we want to see. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stay here in the Power Query Editor this time. And here inside of the Power Query Editor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select New Source. instead of going all the way back out and coming in again, I just select new source here from our home tab. I can go ahead and do the same steps we did before, okay? The same things, right? So what I'll do is I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna choose another Excel file. Okay, if it was saved as a CSV, I could pull in a CSV or a JSON, that metadata type file, a PDF, a SharePoint folder. You can see all the different options there. But in this case, I'm just going to keep another Excel workbook file to keep it simple. And so the one I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in a table from our US sales folder here. And I'm going to pull in our BI dimensions. So these are our dimension tables. These are descriptive attributes describing the items that we have for sale, right? Not describing any of the sales, but the items we have for sale. And then I'm gonna go ahead and import those. And so now we have, for this workbook, we have, again, multiple different tabs. These three are tabs that we can pull in, or we actually have a table that was already created by someone else to be able to pull in as well. So in this case, we have some options. What do we want to see? Do I want to pull in everything? Do I want to pull in the table of the products or just the simple products in their raw format the way they were put in? It's really up to you. If you see here, if I select table, product table, okay, it already has headers all set up. Our product tab, all we need to do is push that first row to header. So you can see it's a quick little step there. In this case, the only one I actually want to use for our quick little demo here is the product table. But we could choose the others if we wanted to cleanse those up as well if we really needed to. So I'm going to choose product table. And when I import the product table, okay, it's going to go through and pull those in here. We can see, I'll refresh that. And we can see, here's our products. Okay, again, it's just a table here describing the products that we have to offer. So we have our product ID, the product, the category that product is currently placed in that we have for our organization, our manufacturer ID, and the price of that product. And so for here, there are a couple things that we want to do to really clean up this table to help us better understand our product. First thing, again, I'm kind of like a stickler for I do the same things every time, kind of in this order. It's a little bit of my OCD, but hey, you do it your way. I like to fix the name. In this case, I don't need product table, right? I don't need it to say that. I know it's a table describing our products. So if I just put products, right? Quickly, I understand what I'm looking at. Simple as that, okay? The next thing I want to do is I want to look at these columns and what's in this column, in these columns, and try to understand the data. Now, for you, you know your data better than anyone else, right? You are the subject matter expert. You know how this is supposed to be set up, so you should know, this doesn't really go well with this, or I want these separate, or all those things. In this case, because I am that subject matter expert here, because I know this data, I know that this product column actually has two different items in it. I have our product name, okay? And I also have the segment in which that product is placed in inside of our organization. Okay, in this case, all these products are bicycles. And so all of these in these all season, these are all season bikes that you can do in cold weather, hot weather. I'm not sure about snow, but probably close, but you can use them in all of our different seasons. And so what I really want to do is I want to separate this column out to say, one of them is our product, the other is our segment. So I know, I can filter down by segment later on. And so what I need to do is I need to split this column. And so what I like to do to split this column, very simple, is just do a right click on the column header itself and come down here and choose split column. Now, when I want to split these columns, and you can split every different data type as different options here when we do this, by the way. Okay, so for a text column, that's what we're looking at right now. I have some options here to split this column by delimiter, which is any type of character that's out, a comma, a colon, a space, a hyphen, a backslash, those types of things. Number of characters, positions, from 3 from the left, 4 from the right, lowercase to uppercase, uppercase to lowercase, digit to non-digit, and non-digit to digit. I have those options. In this case, I'm going to choose by delimiter. And for this, you'll see that Power Query Editor has automatically identified that we have a delimiter in there. We have a hyphen right here, right between the MA and 01. But that's not the one we want, right? We actually want to use this vertical line, this pipe stem delimiter is the one we want to use to separate this column out. So instead of having our hyphen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit shift and backslash to get to my pipe stem. And so from that, I need to say, well, how am I going to split this column, right? What am I going to split it all the way on the left, all the way on the right, or every single time it shows up? Imagine, some of us have seen this quite often. You have a column with maybe somebody's address, or somebody started typing in just data, right, into like a form or something, and they have commas, or colons designating the next like set of data. You might have 4 or 5 that they don't go together. They need to be separated out. If you do that by each occurrence, you'll get 5 different columns, depending upon how many colons or semicolons or anything or commas along the way happens. Now for this case, in this specific example, we only have it show up once, so it doesn't really matter. But for me, by default, I usually like to pick far left and start from there, because it gives me a little feel of control. Like I know we're going from the left. We all read from the left here, so we're going to do that. And then if I hit OK, very quickly, I split that column. I don't have to copy and paste. I don't have to create a new column. It's just done right there, nice and easy for me. I don't have to worry about anything else from that. All right, and so again, that's the point of us using the Power Query Editor, is to just make the general processes that we do on a daily basis easier and faster. And so there's a split. And so now what I can do is I can just rename these. I can rename this first one to product. This second one, double click there to segment. That's good to go. Like I'm done with that. I don't have to worry about it. And every single one along the way is now we see our different segments, the different products that go with it, all of them that are there. Okay. The next step is we have this category column. Now for Excel, when we know that we have a value here, we have all these nulls. We largely know that just means it's going to go with whatever value that is above it, right? A lot of us just know that that's how we use it. But when we start to put this into a visual, we don't want to see null. Like we want to see the actual value, especially if we want to start to filter this down and understand it. So we need to populate each and every one of these cells. Now, the old-fashioned way is we have to copy and paste or double click and it goes down, double click and it goes down, right? We could do that. However, the easy way here in Power Query Editor, we could do everything, every single cell with one click. That's the great thing about Power Query Editor, is we can leverage just the UI capability, the one click, get it done for us, this low code environment. So what I want to do is I want to take mix and I want to fill every single cell. Well, that is ugly. I want to fill there it is, every single cell that says underneath it for mix. And then the next time I hit, say, rural, I want that to now be filling in all of these, all the way down along the way. So every cell is populated. So what I can do very, very quickly and easily is right click on category, come down here to fill and fill down. And when I select fill down, boom, everything's done. That fast, that easy. I don't have to copy and paste. I don't have to rewrite anything. I don't have to double click. It's just done. I'm done. And that's exactly what we want. You go through our entire data set. Everything is now set up for us. The entire thing is ready to go. So I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. I just do it once and I'm done. And so if I ever want to come back to this in the future, one of the great things that we can do here in the Power Query Editors, we can come over to our applied steps and we can say, hey, I did something here. I want to make sure I know maybe in a month's time when I revisit this, like what that exact step was. Or if I pass this off to someone else, I want them to know what that step actually did. So what I can do is where it says fill down, if you right click on a step, you can choose to rename that step. I can say fill down category. So I know exactly where did I fill down. So if I have 30 more steps, I can go, okay, where did I do that fill down that fixed this problem? Oh, I don't have to think about it and click on each one. I just go straight to it. So you can change out those steps. It saves in here when I save this file. In the future, I come in here, I know exactly what I did. Again, I want to make my job easier. I want to make it faster. I want to make it just generally a lot better for me to be able to do. All right. So let's go ahead and close and load all of these to that data model. I want to get every single table, all of them into that data model. So what I'm going to do is over here on our home tab, instead of just clicking the icon, I'm going to hit the drop down here. And instead of close and load, we're going to do close and load to. Again, we want to load these to the data model with that world sales table. Just because maybe we want to in our organization, we want to leverage all those tables, all of those together for one report that we are building. Now, we're not going to do that here, just the example for this case, but if we want to, there's our way to do it. And so here we can import the data. Again, we're going to choose only create connection. Create that connection. We don't want to get every single row here. Create the connection to the data model. Okay, the data model PowerPivot. And then if I hit OK, I'm going to let it go. It's now going to load in all the other rows that we didn't have before. These are pretty small, but you can see them there. And so now if I open up our data model again, manage data model, we can now see we still have our world sales, okay, with our, our 3 million plus rows. If I clear that filter, notice how fast that was, by the way. I could see my body mass index and my product table all there, all at once. And so we can, if we wanted to, we can start to build, say, a pivot table off of it. We can build other items from there. If we add more, we can hit refresh again. Nice and simple, nice and easy. That's the way I like it, right? I want to make my job easier so I can do other things like in the organization. So I can make more money for my company. Or so I can show my boss like how much better at this I am. I need a raise, right? That's part of the goal too. So we can go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this because the next thing we're going to get into, I'm going to close out our data model. I'm just going to do a quick save as here, and I'll just do it to my desktop. We'll do our Learn with the Nerds demo 1, okay? What I'm going to do is we're going to now start on our end-to-end demo, or end-to-end example. We're going to start with different data existing in a different place. We'll have this scenario that we're going to work with that we're going to go ahead and populate all the way through to really see how we can start here in Excel, go to Power BI, and really go for that full circle. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with that. What I want to do is I'm going to open up a blank workbook, a brand new one. Okay, start fresh in this case. And so the scenario that we're going to work with for the rest of our time together is that we work for a company, right? We're an insurance company, essentially, right? And so what we want to do with our organization, with our company, say we're pretty large, we want to understand just data around the country, around the United States, and we want to be able to position ourselves to see, where we are in terms of Medicare. Right? Maybe we don't quite offer insurance for patients with Medicare, and we want to see, hey, what do we don't know about that? Or we're kind of we work with Medicare. We want to see, which hospitals have the most claims, which states maybe have the most claims amounts, right, for each claim. So like to charge the most to their customers. We want to just get a lot of just broad information about data inside the United States surrounding Medicare and the money and position of Medicare in the US. And so we have all of our internal data that we use on a daily basis of our own customers, our own clients, or members. But there's just stuff out there that we're not sure about. So what we can do is we can reach out to outside sources, bring in data to try to understand that for ourselves. And so that's what we're going to do. We are going to actually go out to the web. And we're going to pull in data from the web here in Excel and PowerPivot, or Power Query, excuse me, bring it into PowerPivot afterwards to really understand that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a web browser. Okay, I'm going to pull in my web browser here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to data.medicare.gov. Okay, it is a web page provided by the United States, okay, for data on, as you could tell, Medicare, right? So on just healthcare data. And so here at this web page, it's free source of information, right? You don't have to log in, completely anonymous source of information. Data.gov, by the way, for the United States is another great place that has like 300,000 different data sets freely available to us to pull in outside data, either for like dummy data for practice or for like real purposes, especially like weather and other things like that. And so here on our webpage, data.medicare.gov, is where I'm going to pull in the data that I want to use, with the data that I want to leverage for this. So I'm going to search for general hospital information. If I can spell information right. There it is. General hospital information. Just to get an idea of just a list of all the hospitals that have been registered with Medicare. You can see it right there, right? phone numbers, hospital type, rating, address, all that good stuff. I just want to see where they are, like what state, what city, how many hospitals are out there that actually deal with Medicare. So I select that. I can now see the table here on this webpage. And so for that, I can now go ahead and download the CSV file that all this data is contained inside of. You notice, by the way, it's most recently updated, it's like pretty new. And so I can go ahead and do that. Now, what I can do again is download that CSV file. However, I'm not going to, because what happens if, you can see it was just last updated January 7th. That's what, 3 days ago? Or no, it was a month ago, so excuse me. What happens if it's now going to be updated in a week? If I download that CSV file, I now have to come back here, re-download it again when I find out it's been updated, and do this all over. I don't want that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on that download link, and I'm going to choose to copy the link address. Now, when I copy the link address and I come back into Excel, I can leverage that link address to pull that data from. So I'll come over here into our data tab, and then I can choose to either get data, right? It's down here in other sources, or if you notice here, from web is a most often used option. So I can just select from web right there, and I can just paste in the location of that CSV file from the web and point to it. So every time the data is now updated on the web, I now get the most updated version of that. All I need to do is hit refresh, and all those changes are made again, just like we did with our folder example. It's the exact same way. So it's an awesome way to leverage this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And so when I do this, as we've seen already a couple of times, we're going to get a preview. Preview is roughly the first 20 or so rows of that table, of that data set that we're pulling in. Okay, and then from that, I have our options again to either load this directly into Excel or to transform data, which is the one we want to choose. So when I do that, here is our Power Query editor, what we're now used to working with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh that. It's a little old there from what last time I've done this. Okay, and now what I can do is, first step, I do it every time. Okay, again, it might be my little quirk maybe. I'm going to rename this. I don't need it to say hospital general information. Like, I just don't. Okay, what I want it to say is just hospitals. It's a list of hospitals, a distinct list of all the hospitals inside the United States that deal with Medicare. That's it. Nice and simple. So I know what I'm looking at. So maybe if I have like other users that are going to take a look at this later on, they will know what they're looking at as well when they pull from here. And so now we can go through just some general data cleansing steps. We can go through some process here to set up our table to maybe work for us that a little bit better. And so there's a couple things that we want to do. Okay, if I look at our columns here, you can see we have 38 columns, so we have a lot, right, that we're working with. Right, the first thing is we kind of go through the first couple of these. Are like, okay, I see facility name, I see address, city, state, all these. Okay, we have a couple of things here. Well, we talked about already the zip code, right? We mentioned that before, particularly like in the northeast of the United States, right? They have a leading 0. Right now our zip code is, we can see it's set up as a whole number. If I showcase our filter here, you notice we have some that are 4-digit, and they're 4-digit because I can guarantee you they are somewhere in the northeast. Like, let me just pick one. Let's pick, I don't know, I'm picking a random one. 6076. If I do that, where are we looking at? Oh, Connecticut. I knew it. I knew it. Right? New Jersey, New York, Connecticut area, they are going to have that leading 0. Okay? I grew up there, so I know that. And so we want to make sure that this zip code is changed because we want to see every single digit. We want to see that leading 0. So let's go ahead and change that out to a text data type. Replace that current step, from change type. And now we get that leading 0. So if we look at northern New Jersey or New York or Connecticut, we are going to be able to see those specific areas that have that leading 0 in it. Okay, we'll be able to actually see that when we pull that into like a map or something. All right, so then we have some other data cleansing steps that we want to use. Now, I mentioned before that we have a lot of columns here as I scroll through. We're looking at 38 columns, over 1,000 rows of data here. Okay, but a lot of these columns, as you scroll through, just count a facility safety measures. We're not really caring about that safety. We just want to see the Medicare data, right? The raw data there. So we don't really need all these extras. So what we could do, as we did before, is pick a column and just remove it, or right click and remove it. Now the problem here is because we have so many, that's going to be a process, right? If we, control select, right, we can do that. But again, that's a process of going over and doing that. Instead, we have a better option. And the better option here, and this is the fastest way to do it, by the way, is to come up here and select choose columns. Because if we select choose columns, what we're able to do is decide the exact columns we want to keep. Everything else goes away. Okay. So if I do that, I'm going to hit choose columns. I can now see a vertical list of all of the columns that I have inside of this table. So maybe for some of us, we know that we have, for some columns, we have a prefix to them, right? Some type of identifier for that, for our organization, for the department, or whatever. We have that. So we can search in a prefix. Maybe if I do like a hospital or something, I'd search for that, and I can say, you know what? I want these that all say hospital in them. So I can select all of them, right, to make sure that they're there. So when I come back here, they're going to be selected. Right? Or you can do the same thing and search for them and say, you know what, I want those, but I don't want these other ones. And if I hit and I clear this out, now I can see that those are not selected in my full list. So it's a good way for us to see exactly what was chosen or what wasn't chosen. And it's easier and faster for us to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect all these, and I'm going to choose all of these first few all the way through hospital ownership. Okay, facility ID through my hospital ownership. All this extra stuff for what we're looking at right now, it's just it's not fluff, but it's just extra we just don't need. And then I can hit OK. Okay, and now that I have OK, I've done that, I can see I've removed the other columns. I've kept these and removed others. So now we can see we're now down to 10. We get all the way here. But if you look at this one, I see phone number. It's not very often that we analyze data by phone number. I don't really care what a hospital's phone number is if I'm trying to see how many claims they have, right? I'm not going to call them up and ask them. So do we really need phone number in this case? Probably not. So instead of me doing that whole step over, one of the great things again about the applied steps here for Power Query is if I just hit this little gear icon, I can come over here and I can say, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get rid of phone number. I don't like it. Let's just get rid of that. I made a mistake. I hit OK, it's gone, right? It's gone that quickly. And so if I didn't realize this until the very last step, I could do that too. And it's nice and quick for me to do it. So it's an easy way for me to do that. All right, so the next thing we want to do is let's look at what we have here. We have facility name, address, city and states, zip code, county name, all that stuff. Now, when we think about city, state in this example here, if we look at how maybe we want to analyze our hospitals by city, right? If we want to say, I want to see how many hospitals that deal with Medicare claims, and I want to see how many are in Springfield. You might be like, well, okay, Springfield what? Like Springfield, Illinois, Springfield, New Jersey, Springfield, Massachusetts, Springfield, New Mexico? Where are we going? And so because we have such generic names for some cities in the United States especially, having these as separate columns in a lot of cases can become very difficult later on, right? So what we actually might want to see is we might want to have one column that has city and state together to be able to more closely identify a precise location, right? I want to see Springfield, MA, Springfield, Massachusetts, right? I want to be able to hone in on that one and see all the hospitals that might be there. So what we need to do is we actually need to combine this. But if I combine it, then I'm also losing the individuals. So one of the great things we have here in the Power Query Editor is a way to add in new columns very, very quickly, very easily, while still keeping the originals there if we want. So I'm going to come over here and choose Add Column. Now I can choose to add a custom column. I can leverage the M or mashup language that is here in the Power Query Editor. I can do something of a combined text where I'll take the city, I'll do an ampersand, I'll do a double quote, comma, space, another one, pull in the state. I'm using some of my data language there to be able to pull it in. If you know it, hey, you can do it. But if you don't know that, if you don't know what I just said, or you're like, well, you did a lot of stuff there, I'm not sure what he was talking about, then you don't need it. You don't need to know it. And that's the great thing here is you can actually leverage the AI here and let it do it for you. So I'm going to come over here and instead choose column from examples. And I'm going to make sure I choose from all columns. And here we now have this little pop-up window inside of the Power Query Editor. And you can see here what we're going to need to do. Enter sample values to create a new column. So we're going to simply say in this row over here, we're going to enter a sample value from any of the columns that we have, and it will populate this final row. So if I want to see city, comma, state, if I select this first row, I can do D-O-T-H-A-N, right, comma, for Dothan, so I'm going across the row here, A-L for Alabama. And once I hit enter, watch what happens. I now have every single row populated automatically without having to do anything. I don't have to retype it. It's just done for me instantaneously in the format that I want. Notice right here in our city, these are all caps. I just put a capitalized first letter. So now I see the exact format I want. I hit enter and it's done it for every single one in my table, just like that. I can add in a full address if I wanted to. I can go even further. You can just do all that by leveraging the AI here to help do that for you. So now all I need to do is rename this merge to city, state, and hit OK. And I will get a new column here that now goes, I'll select number 8 here, Alabaster, Alabama. There it is, Alabaster, Alabama. That's pretty easy to do, right? That's fast. That makes our life a lot easier. I don't have to worry about anything from that point on. And so now when I look at it, I go, okay, that was cool, but what about this city column again? Like it's all caps. Like I want it to match city state because I don't like seeing all caps. It's a quick little transform. On a text data type, if I right click on it, I can come down here to transform and I can choose to capitalize each word. Just like that. And that's as easy. I don't have to worry about anything. It does it for me. I have so many amazing transforms here inside of the Power Query Editor that I can do on, especially our text types. If we look at our whole number types here, we can do transform. We can, that's not text, that's not a whole number. Let's see, do we have any? No, these are all text. So we have here. So we have different data types that we can see. Our date transforms. We can say we want to parse out the year, the quarter, the month, the day, the week. We can say when we want to do that in our transform, that we can create all this and really have it set up in the exact format that we want to do. So things are pretty good for us. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pause here for a moment because what I want to do is in this this next set here is I want to showcase some of the amazing things that we have here from Pragmatic Works that we can go ahead and provide to you. I'm going to pull in, make sure my folder here is set up for us. Provide to you as any type of things that you might want to see in the future if you like this presentation or any other future presentations we might have. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come over and open up our web browser, and I'm going to come over, and you're already in YouTube. You've seen our YouTube page. You can see on our YouTube page for Pragmatic Works that we have a lot of amazing videos for you. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'll come in YouTube Pragmatic Works, and you can see on our page, and again, a lot of you have seen here, we provide free videos all the time, okay, that are out there for you to be able to leverage, to be able to use consistently. Some of the other things that we also have available for purchase as well is that we offer some really great on-demand learning. Now, our on-demand learning platform is an amazing place, and I think Anthony's going to go ahead and put a link into our on-demand learning platform, is a place that it's honestly, we have so many different courses. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that platform as well. So many different courses available for you to take to really open up your horizons here to understand more about not just what we're looking at today, but just everything in general. So here we have learning.pragmaticworkstraining.com. This is our on-demand learning platform. And we have over 70 different courses available. We're at roughly 17. We have more courses coming in even in the next few months here available. We have 17 courses on Power BI alone that you can come through and leverage to be able to really expand what your knowledge base is here with everything you're looking at. Now, if you scroll through, we have some of our free ones from our in-a-day courses that we've given permission by Microsoft to record because we are a Microsoft partner. So Microsoft lets us get a little bit extra there. You can see all of these different courses here available that if you want to expand what you might want to know for yourself or for your entire organization, we have them for you. Now, right now, as I mentioned as we started, we are running for this specific session here a 50% off on all of our on-demand learning platform. I'm telling you, it's usually $4.95. Cut that in half. That's for you for today. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and get onto that for an entire 12 months, a full year access, we are now running that right now for this class that we're all working with here as well. And so with that on-demand learning platform, we also offer a lot of other private and public engagements. One of the things that we do is we do boot camps. Now we offer some public boot camps where you can go to our webpage and you can sign up for a boot camp for Power BI, for Azure, for Power Apps. I'm going to be creating a boot camp for Power Automate as well that we'll be doing pretty soon. So we have all these boot camps that are 3 to 4 day deep dive, in-depth sessions on the entire platform itself, on that ecosystem, either Power BI or the others, to really give you a full scale view of everything available to you to really help you understand those specifically. We offer those publicly and privately. So if you at your organization, you might have 10 or 15 of you that really want to get into Power BI and go full in on Power BI. We offer private Power BI bootcamps that we try to work with you, and we'll use examples, so try to frame that around whatever organization you might be working with. If you're working in real estate, I just did one a few weeks ago with a company that is in real estate. So we try to frame all the conversations of understand real estate data with that. We also offer hackathons. Now, what hackathons are a way for us to really provide you the skills necessary to understand your own data. So inside a hackathon, what we do is we have you in control of the screen, of the clicks every single time. You're in control of everything. We're here on our side to help guide you through the process of solving any specific problem that you have. We are there to provide you an end-to-end solution in one day. Right, in 8 hours, 9 hours time, to be able to help you out to fully understand how you can do this again. Now, I'm going to mention, we are a training company. We are not consultants. We are not here to just do it for you, you move on. What we want to do is, and we have a lot of our trainers use this, teach you how to fish. All right, we want you to learn this for yourself. So in the future, you can come back for us if you have little questions here or there, but you get to do all this on your own. You can really build out your own skill base to be able to understand all the processes necessary for this. And then with that, what we also have, and I'll get my face out of the way here real quick, is we also have our customized enterprise training. Now with our customized enterprise training, we really set up classes, multiple different courses and classes for your organization, specific to you. So we'll work with you on setting up classes, either Power BI or Azure or Power Apps or whatever you might think, T-SQL, SSIS, whatever works for your organization, we create classes for you. We're actually working with a pretty large organization right now, two actually large, we're about 40,000 members of that organization that we're providing classes to on a weekly basis. So it's a pretty large scale solution there. So if you have a big company, you want everybody to get in on this, this is a way for us to work with you to develop classes specific for you, only for you, with your data. We'll create data for you to help your employees get better at that. And then finally, what we have is our architect mentoring. Now for our architect mentoring, what it is, it's an opportunity for you to work with one of our trainers, myself, or all the other trainers here on staff, to get a way to solve problems right now. So with our one-on-one mentoring sessions, you can book as little as 30 minutes at a time, or as much as 3 hours at a time as you may need, to be able to work with us in that time frame to try to fix a problem, right? You might not be able to work really hard at something, you just can't solve it. You schedule a time with us, we'll get on a call with you, and we'll explain how to fix it. And so next time, you do it for yourself. Now, for our architect mentoring, we do have a minimum 3-hour purchase, and then you can span that 3 hours out into 30-minute increments, however you may want, or an hour increment, however you want to have that. So it is another way for you to be able to just simply get more information, to be able to understand your own skill set, to understand your data, to be able to really learn more for yourself. Okay, so we are now right at the halfway point into our current session. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to take a quick little 10-minute break here. And so after that 10-minute break, we're going to continue with this current data model, with this current example, and start to build out our full end-to-end solution. We'll actually add in an additional table here. We'll go through some cleansing steps with that other table, and then we'll start to talk about how we can bring in Power BI and what we can use in Power BI to just make this look amazing for us to use. All right, so we'll take a 10-minute break. I'll see everybody back here in 10 minutes time, and we're gonna just keep on keeping on. All right, see you. everybody, welcome back. Hopefully that quick little 10-minute break gave you an opportunity to go grab some water, some coffee, hit the restroom or anything needed there. I certainly needed to get some water myself. So where we left off before our little break here, we brought in one table from a web page into the Power Query Editor, our hospitals table. And here in the Power Query Editor, we did some cleansing steps for our hospital table to really set it up to go ahead and to do some of those analysis that we want to see. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to add in another table. And the next table, we're actually going to add it in back from that same web page. And one thing to notice, and I've seen a little questions here inside of our chat along the way, is it doesn't matter if it's a CSV file, an Excel file, or even if it's a web table, say in like Wikipedia or something. We have the ability with the Power Query Editor to be able to pull in that data pretty easily, no matter kind of what file type it is. Now, I will say the Power Query Editor here in Excel is a little bit more limited than the one in Power BI, which we're going to showcase here in a moment. So just keep that in mind. What we do in Power BI, we have a little bit more capabilities. So it is one way to think about, maybe if you have some other sources, some other options that you might be wanting to work with. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to go back into that Medicare.data.gov there, data.medicare.gov, and I'm going to open that back up. I'm going to go back a moment, and instead of searching for general hospital information, the next one that we're going to want to get is like the metric data for Medicare, right? So now we have a distinct list of all of our hospitals. What we now is to see, okay, what about the spending per hospital or claims per hospital or all those things that go with, for the organization that we want to work for here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to search for Medicare spending by claim. Okay, so just to get a better understanding of just the general Medicare spending, right? Especially with the different claims available. And we want to be able to see which hospitals have more spending, maybe in different states or cities, and also on which claims as well, right? To give us a better position or leverage a better position inside of that Medicare ecosystem. And so once again, we're just going to select that first one. In this case, it's the only one. And once again, we are going to select to copy the link address. We're not going to download the entire CSV file. We're going to copy the link address because we want the most up-to-date data. We want the newest version anytime this gets updated. So I'm going to go ahead and copy link address. And so we'll go back into the Power Query Editor. Okay, and here in the Power Query Editor, we are going to add in that additional table. Now, we need to do that at our Home tab. And from the Home tab here, the Home ribbon at the top, we can come on over to New Source, and we're going to choose Other Sources. And that's where our web option is located. Now, when I select the web option, just as we did before, we're going to go ahead and just paste in the location of that CSV file and hit OK. And now we'll get our little preview, as we always do, okay, of about the first 20 or so rows of data that we can pull in. And I'm going to hit OK to pull that in here. And so now with this data, the first thing I like to do, and again, that's a little bit of my OCD. I kind of have like, these are the steps I take because I like to think things be nice and neat when I work here, is I'm going to rename the table. And so in this case, I'm not going to do it on the far right. I'm just going to come over here in our query pane. I'm going to double click here, and I'm just going to call this our claims table. Pretty simple, pretty easy. That's it, claims, and move on from there. And so now we can go through some of the data cleansing steps to set up our claims table to make it actually work for us. And so as we go through, we can see we have a lot of the actual data that we want to work with in this case. Okay, so the first one, we have our facility name. We can go ahead and do a quick transform to make that facility name capitalize each word. We can then come into facility ID. Now, facility ID in this case, right now, we can see our facility ID is a whole number data type. Now, if I go back over to my hospitals table, you'll notice that our facility ID is currently set at a text data type. That was done automatically. But you will also notice that in the very first cell here, in the very first row, we have a leading 0 for our facility ID. Well, if we have a leading 0, that must mean that it means something, right? That's some type of identifier that we need to have. So what I want to do is I want to make sure my claims table for the facility ID matches that, because I want to be able to use this later on to be able to build a relationship between those two tables. I want to use this as the key column to allow these two tables to communicate. Because if you look at facility name here, for our very first one, Southeast Health Medical Center, okay, we have Southeast Health Medical Center. We have that match. So we now can use this as a way, simply to like look up our tables in another. So I can go ahead in our claims table and I can change that out to our text data type, okay, for facility ID. Now you'll notice on our hospitals table, our facility name, that was in all caps too. We could go through there and transition that to just capitalize the first letter. But in this case, we're not necessarily needing that because it depends on where we pull it from. It's okay for what we're talking about. If we're doing this in the real world, we'll do every single row, column and make sure every single one is set up. For the sake of what we're doing today, I think we're okay on that one. And so the next thing we want to do is just simply, again, look at the data. We want to focus on the data to make sure we're cleaning it up, get rid of extra stuff, get rid of if there's any errors or any nulls or things along the way that just doesn't work for what we want to do. And if you start to scroll through here and you look at each column here, say for period or for claim type, what you'll notice is if I just look at what's inside of that column itself, if I come down here to row number 22, on row number 22, what you'll see here for our period column, it says complete episode. For claim type, it says total. And then if we come even further to our average spending per episode, hospital and state and national, that number there, if you're looking at that, you're like, well, that's a pretty big number. It's kind of like an outlier. Everything around it is much, much smaller. Well, what that actually is, and you can see it here on claim type, that's the total. So this is giving me essentially a subtotal of this category for that hospital, essentially for that specific hospital across the way. Now, if we keep that in there, if we keep that in its current state, our data is going to be wrong, right? We have double data. This is bad. We don't want to have this in there because we put this into a table or a chart or anything. Everything's going to be all messed up. So we need to get rid of that entire total row there to make sure it doesn't mess up all of the visuals or everything we want to see. And you notice it doesn't just show up there on row 22. It actually shows up on row 44. Every single time we move on to another hospital, the very last row there is our complete episode. So we want to get rid of that for each one because we want to make sure our data is actually what it needs to be. So in order to do that, what we can do is we can filter out that row. We can filter out a single cell or the entire row here. And so you could choose to either do it on your period column or claim type column. I like it on the claim type because it looks a little bit better there. I'm going to come to the claim type column and I'm going to select our little filter dropdown and I'm going to choose to deselect the total row. And when I do that and just hit OK, it's now gone. And we can see here in our applied steps, filtered rows. I'm going to rename that. Okay, you can see if I double click, it tells me exactly what happened. If I right click and rename it, filtered out total rows is what I'm going to put in. Just so next time I can see exactly what that filter was applied on. Right? If I wanted to do a date filter, I can do that as well. I can say I only want to see dates between, say, oh, here's our start date and end date. I want to see after, what is this, July 1st, 2020, but before August 1st, 2020. I can choose that and it'll filter out the rows as well. I can apply those types of date filters to really hyper focus on a specific time period if I need to. Right? We have all those capabilities here inside of the Power Query Editor to be able to work for us. Right? So that looks pretty good. I think that this one is generally set up in a decent way here. We could rename some of the column headers here to maybe have it work a little bit nicer, like the average spending here. It's kind of a smaller version of that. But in this case, we're okay with it having it like that. It's really average spending per claim here, per episode. Each episode is a claim, just to keep in mind there for each hospital, for state, and for across the country there. You can see for national, okay, giving that data. And so now we are ready to go. We're ready to now go ahead and load this out to our data model to be able to use, to leverage, and start create some visuals on it. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to choose close and load to once again. Close and load to. Now for this, we need to say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to import the data into that data model there? Okay, I'm going to only create a connection and I'm going to add it to the data model. Hit OK. We're now going to see the same section here on the far right, and I'll get my face out of the way for a moment so you can see all that. Okay, everything's there. We have our hospitals table and our claims table. We can see everything that's come in. We have all the columns and we have the data source as well. So it's giving us all of that information. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up our data model. Okay, and inside our data model, now we can actually see all of the rows, all of the columns here between the two tables. Now, if you want to see the two tables in kind of like a better picture view, right, in a more of a different format, what we can do up here on our home tab is we can select the diagram view. And in the diagram view, we can see our tables here a little bit nicer, right? A little bit more neat here to be able to build with. And so I have our hospitals table and our claims table, okay? And so what we then have the ability to do is we can go ahead and say, hey, how are they going to communicate? How is this going to work? If I want to make a visual that pulls, say, the facility name from our hospital table or the city-state column that we created, but also shows the claim type or the average spending, I need these two tables to be connected to be able to communicate. I need to create a relationship. And so what I can do is I can select the columns that I want that relationship to be built on. So I will say here in PowerPivot or the data model in Excel, this is actually a little bit more complicated than what we would do in Power BI. In Power BI, we can do this much faster, much easier, and we can really set this up to make it just an easy way for us to do it. So in Power BI, it's a very easy drag and drop, right? We can set that up. Here in Excel, we can kind of do that the same. We drag and drop, and we have that there, but we have a little bit, it's just not as quick, not as nice, not as perfect, okay? And so then what we have established here between our two tables is we have this line down the middle that represents our relationship. A solid line represents an active relationship. We can actually have multiple relationships between tables. After an active, you have an inactive, which is, it'll show up as a little bit of a dashed line. What we'll also have here is, if you see on my screen here, we have a 1 and a little star. We also have, if you can tell here, a nice little arrow there as well. Now the arrow there is pointing from our hospitals into our claims. What the arrow tells us is how these are going to be filtering, right? Called our cardinality. What table is going to filter the other. And in this case, when we think about our data modeling, and we'll showcase this a little bit better in Power BI, we have our hospitals table here. Okay, this is the one side of the relationship. Okay, the number 1 kind of gives that away, right? On the claims table, this is the many side of the relationship. That star represents many, which means we have over here on our hospital table, we have the facility name listed 1 time on that table. However, that facility name can be listed many times on our claims table, right? You think about how many different claims types that a specific facility might be offering or might be working with. So with this, when you think of a one-to-many relationship, this is what we want to have when we start to look at our data modeling. And so as we build this out further and further and get deeper into data modeling, you'll have many of these one-to-many relationships to be able to filter down one to see the data specific for the other. And so when we think about the way that we organize these in our one-to-many relationship, we have in our hospital table, we call this our dimension table, okay? And our dimension table, or our lookup table, okay, is where we are saying how we want the data to be filtered, right? Over here on our claims table, this is called our fact table or our data table. And so this is all of our metrics. This is all of our actual data that we're looking at. And so when we think about the relationship between the fact and the dimension table, we say, I want to see claim type or average spending by facility name. I want to see it by state. I want to see it by hospital type or by ownership. So I like to, especially with a lot of the classes that I have and people that are new to data modeling, reference our dimension table as our by table. So think of it in your other examples. I want to see so maybe I'm another table that has all of our like customers or members, and I want to see them by gender or by age or age group breakdown or by address or anything along those ways, or by specific month, right? Those are our dimension, our descriptive tables. Dimension tables describe the fact, describe the data, the metrics that we're using. And if we can set this up for our filtering to occur, it's going to be much faster inside of our data model for us to actually populate those visuals and to do a lot of those amazing calculations that we like to have that we'll showcase inside of Power BI. All right, so now that we have our tables, our relationships all set up, what we can do, okay, is we can close out this data model and we can build a pivot table. We can just do it real quick right away. So I'm going to go ahead and close out our data model. And so now I can insert a pivot table here, leveraging the data model to be able to showcase maybe if I want to see average spending per hospital by state. So let's go ahead and come to insert, the insert tab at the top. I'm going to come to pivot table, and now I'm going to say I want to insert a pivot table from the data model, right? That's where all the data is now being stored, from the data model. I'm going to put up my existing worksheet, and so now we can see all of the data there that we want to use to populate our pivot table. And so in this case, maybe we want to see, again, average spending per episode hospital. That's going to go into our values. So we're going to get some type of metric, a sum, a min, a max, an average, anything along the way that we might see, okay? And then I want to see that by, let's do it by state. And so now we can see the average spending by state. And I can say, hey, over here for our sum of average spending, like, how do I want to see this data here? You know, if I want to look at that, I can double click and go deeper into it. I can see, you know, now I'm looking at just for Florida, right? We can go through all of these and really filter things down to set up our data even further, right? We all work with pivot tables, especially those of us that live in Excel. We know how they work. Well, now we've just set that up using the data model, setting it up even better for us, making it just much easier for us to be able to do. Okay, really good, really easy to do. All right, so now it is time. Now it is time to take everything we've done here in Excel in the Power Query Editor with our data model. Okay, we built out a little sample table there. Now we can go and take this and we're going to move it into Power BI. And inside of Power BI, we're going to start to leverage some of the amazing visuals and capabilities of Power BI to really set this apart from anything we could really do in traditional Excel. So in order to do this, first, I need to save it. Then the next step is, before you try to import anything into Power BI, you have to close out this workbook. You have to close it out. Otherwise, it won't work. I'm just going to tell you right away. It's just not going to work if you don't close it out. So I'm going to come here and choose File, and I'm going to do a Save As. I'm going to put it to my desktop again, and I'll go ahead and put it into our folder here. And I'm going to call this our Excel to Power BI model. All right, and then I'm going to save it. And once it's saved, I'm going to close it out altogether. I'll also close out our other demo that we had earlier. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Power BI Desktop. And so as Power BI Desktop opens up, okay, what we're going to do is now going to import that Power Pivot data model here in Power BI. Now, if this is your first time opening up Power BI, what you are going to get, and I'm just going to show up our little splash screen here, you're going to get this screen here. Okay, what this screen simply does is gives you an opportunity to see some of the things from Power BI. On the far left, you have your more recent sources, your recent projects. Okay, on the middle, you'll have just some links to videos and things to help you along the way. And on the far right, you have some places, some links to get to the community pages at Power BI. I will say the Power BI community, if you hit forums or any of these, is very active. Very, very active indeed. And so if you have any questions, you're confused or anything, you can go over to the forum page there and really get a lot of answers like very quickly there. It also has one in Spanish as part of the forum there too. So you can see all those questions and answers in Spanish as well. So it's updated on an hourly basis, and people are very active there. It's one of the few community pages that I think is just, it's set up really well. The Power BI community is awesome. So if you have any questions, honestly, there's a really great place there. Or you come over to our YouTube page and you can see more videos like this. All right, so here in Power BI, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first import that data model that we just made. And then I'll showcase some of the things we have here and then get into just making this report look awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to File, okay, go from File, and now I'm going to choose to import. And now I'm not going to import anything, a template or all this, but I'm going to import from Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View. And now the only way, again, this is going to work, now here's my Excel at Power BI model, is if that Excel workbook is closed. If it's not closed, I'm telling you right now, it won't show up. I actually had taught a class 2 weeks ago and forgot to close it, and I was like scrambling around. It didn't work. And I was like, oh, I have to close it for that to work. And there it is. Once you do it, it pops up like that quick. So go ahead and we'll open that. And now you're going to get a warning. And every time you do this, you will have this warning pop up that essentially tells you you're about to import a data model, PowerPivot, from Excel. This is a one-way street. You do this, you can't go back. You can't go back into the data model there and work with it there. It is now in Power BI only. So keep that in mind. Okay, so this is a one-way ticket here. Once you do it, it's done for good. So now I'm going to hit Start. Because we want to do it here in Power BI, because Power BI lets us take that data model and do way more with it than we could back in Excel. All right, so now I'm going to hit Close. And so what we can do here with our model is we could just take a look at some of the things that we have. Currently right now in Power BI, there are 3 things on the far left here. These are the different views that we have. We are currently in the report view where we make our report visuals, right? Where we can set up our visuals. Beneath that, we have our data view, which allows us to see the tables, the columns, the rows in that tabular format that we are pretty much used to in Excel. We can see everything there. And then finally, we have our model view. The model view is very similar to what we just saw in the data model in Excel, in that diagram view where we could see the tables. It's just kind of like little squares there, rectangles, to see the relationships between them. Okay, so those are the 3 big items here for Power BI that we're going to be leveraging. And so what we want to do is let's just go take a look at those views real quick and then see everything else that we're looking at. So I'm going to go to the data view, and inside the data view here, if I select the table, you can see there's our claims table. Okay, we can see all the columns, all the rows, all 52,731 of them. We come into the hospitals table, you can see the same thing. Okay, all of them there. Okay, then we can come into our model view. Oh, there is our data model. Okay, we have our, if I'm going to put it in the way that we saw it on the other view there in Excel, we have our hospitals and our claims tables. Okay, we have our one-to-many relationship. Notice here, it's just a little bit more interactive. It lights up a little bit here in Power BI. Now for Power BI, because relationships here are way easier to create, if I did this wrong for some reason, this facility ID, I did it wrong, all I need to do is if I right click, I can just delete it like that relationship. Like it's that easy. And they're like, oh, actually, oh, I wanted that. I made a mistake. I didn't want to delete it. Oh, all you need to do is, again, facility ID, facility ID. It's that fast. It's way easier to have here in Power BI. If you want to understand it, double click on that line. You can see the columns from each table, the cardinality, and the filter direction as well. Okay, it's actually a much better, much easier to do all that modeling side here in Power BI than rather in the data model in Excel, I will say. Okay. So let's go back into our report view and let's just start building a report. Let's make it. We now have the data set up. We have done a lot of the back-end cleansing steps. Let's go ahead and make our report. Because when we think about a Power BI report, there are really 4 phases of everything we go through. The first is we are doing our data cleansing, right? We're bringing in the data, our data discovery. We're going to go into the Power Query editor. We're going to get rid of columns, we're going to transform, we're going to do all that back-end stuff. Then we have our data modeling in our second phase. In the data modeling phase, this is where we do our relationships. where we start to build out hierarchies if we want to, where we can add new columns using data analysis expression language, our DAX coding language here in Power BI. Our third phase is our visualization phase. And in the visualization phase, what we do is we build out our visuals. We actually set them up to, get the picture of the actual visual, the table, the chart, the graph, all that kind of stuff. And then finally, our fourth phase is to publish it out. Send it out to the world at Power BI service so others can view it. We just hit a quick button there. There's our publish button, and we can do it that way. We've already done the first phase, and most of the second phase has been done for us. We did that back in Excel. So now we'll do a little bit of our modeling and our visuals together, and then our final one, we'll just send things out. So let's go ahead and let's do that right now. So what I'm going to first do is here in Power BI is I want to set up my report. Now ahead of time, I've decided, as for my organization, for our reports, I want to create a background that everybody uses to just insert items. It just looks nice and cool, nice and neat, that everybody can implement into their reports. So I created a background. I did it in PowerPoint, by the way, and saved it as a file, as an image file, that I'm just going to import here to then land all my visuals on. And so what I could do for just to edit any type of visual or our report itself, I come over here to our little paint roller format icon here. Okay. And so if I select the paint roller icon, I can come over here to page background and I can choose to add an image. And that's what I want. If I want to change a color, I can do a color real fast. But in this case, I created one. So I want to go ahead and do that. And it points right to our folder here that I have everything saved in. And there is our Medicare claims report background. I'm going to open that up. And so what you'll see is, right now it's nothing. And this happens all the time. If this happens to you, don't be afraid. All you need to do is fix your transparency. Right now it's 100% transparent, which means you can see right through it. But if I bump it down to 0, there's our background. Again, I created this in PowerPoint. It's not perfect. It's not amazing, but it does the trick, right? It's nice and easy. Now you can have one really, if you have somebody in marketing or somebody in your team that's really good at, they like all that kind of stuff, they can make some amazing background templates for you to land your visuals on. And so from here, we can start to add in some visuals, right? We can start to populate some visuals. And so for those visuals, there's a couple that I want to see. Okay, I actually want to see two different little card visuals. A card visual is just simply a visual that has a number, a value that just displays that number throughout the process. But I want these card visuals to show metrics that we actually don't have. Like I want one to be like our total claims all together. Like I want to see every claim, just the total amount of claims, that number. Right now, we can't really do that because we don't have a column to do that for us. So I have to create that. What I also want to see is I want to see like the average spending per claim as well. I don't really have that. I have average spending per episode hospital, but it does a sum, it does some extra stuff. So I want to set something up where it just shows me the average every single time. In order to do that, what we actually need to do is we need to leverage DAX, this data analysis expression language. Okay, and DAX allows us to create calculated tables, like a date table, calculated columns, like using data that's already existing, creating a new column from it, like an age group breakdown or something like that, and calculated measures, which are these aggregations that we automatically set up to be dynamic to change depending upon any filter that might be in place with that specific measure. So if I have that measure on a card visual and I click on something else, it'll be dynamically calculating depending upon the other visuals, any slicers, any other selection I may have on the page itself. And so that's what I'm going to do. We're going to create two different calculated measures to show both total claims filed and the average spending per claim. All right, so the first one we want to do is total claims, just total. I want to see all of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the claims table here. I'm going to place it on my claims table. And to create a new measure, once I hit the claims table, what you'll see is under table tools, you have an option here to create a new measure. It has this little calculator icon. It helps us out. You can also right click on claims table, it does it too. And I'm going to select new measure. And for our new measure in this case, I'm going to just bump this up a little bit bigger. I'm going to call this measure our total claims filed. Okay, nice and simple. And The function that I'm going to use to calculate the total claims filed is the count rows function. And what the count rows function does, okay, is if I'm going to go back for a second here, I'm going to start typing. You see our little IntelliSense here, and I can go all the way through. What a count rows function does is if I hit the little I icon there, it tells you, counts the number of rows in a table. Well, if we want to see the total claims filed, count all of the rows. Every row in our claims table represents a different claim filed. There it is, right? That's exactly what we want. So we're going to count rows. Which table are we going to count rows in? If I hit a single quote that always calls out to a table using DAX, I'm going to count the claims table. And that's all I want to do. Close out my parentheses. That is it. As simple as that. I don't care about anything else. I'm going to hit enter. And so now our first calculated measure has been created. And so I can create a card visual. I'm going to hit card and populate a card visual here. I'm going to move it around similar to how we have in like PowerPoint. You can see we have these little red lines here that tell us from the middle and all that. I'm going to put it all the way up here in this corner here. And I'm going to drag in our total claims filed right on top of that visual. Nice and simple, right? And so now what I can do is I can format this visual to show me the actual number. So some other ways of looking at visuals here in Power BI, which is why a lot of us go to Power BI because the visuals are so cool. We come over with the visual selected to our little paint roller icon, and we can decide exactly what we want this to see. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into data label, and I'm going to choose for my display units. Right now it's at auto, like 53K, right, for 1,000. I'm going to change that to none because I want to see the full number. What I also want to make sure I'm doing is I want to make sure that our text size, and in this case, I'll drop it down to 30. I think it's a little bit big because I want to make this, I'm going to actually put 2 cards here. What I also want to make sure I'm doing here is this number, 52731, I want that little comma separator, right? I want that to be in here right after for 52,000. And so if I want that here in Power BI, similar to what we saw back in Excel, what we can do, but here's a little bit faster and easier. If I select that column there, select the measure in this case, what I can do is once it's selected, click the word. Up here in our measure tools, all I need to do is choose to add in the comma separator. And it does it very quickly for us. It's nice and simple for us to be able to do. Okay, so there's one. Let's do our second calculated measure. And again, this second one is I want to see the average spending per claim. Right? Just I don't want it to. Sometimes we could see, and we've had one, by the way, automatically created back when we created that pivot table in Excel. We have a sum of average spending per claim here. I don't want the sum. I just want the average, right? That's it. If this one is going to get added up, it's not going to work for me. So we're going to create our own calculated measure. So I'm going to right click this time on our claims table and choose new measure. And for this new measure, again, I'm just going to call this our average spending per claim. Nice, easy title for us to understand. And so this time I'm going to use the average function, which if you're an Excel user, you should know that one, right? I think most of us will understand what the average function will do, just get an average of the number. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to do an average of that average spending per episode hospital. So essentially it takes an average of that average. It's going to give us the same value anyway, so we don't have to worry about it. So the first thing we need to do is call out to which table, okay, that claims table. And you can notice the IntelliSense here in Power BI with DAX is already giving us where we're doing it, like which columns we have available to do an average on. So we're going to go to the claims table, and actually this first one right here. So I can just use the arrow keys on my keyboard, or I can click on it with my mouse and it'll automatically grab it. And then I can close that out and hit enter. I now have my second measure. So our second measure is created, and now let's go ahead and create another card visual, and I'll put it right next to that other one. I'm going to go ahead and put this measure right inside. And so for this one, I'm going to do pretty much the same type of cleansing steps here, or not cleansing, the formatting steps here, so I can have everything matched pretty nicely. So I'll come into format, I'll go into data label, I'll do our display units, I'll do it to none, okay? What I'll do is I'll bump this down to say 30 again so it fits. We can already see here we have a comma and a decimal, okay? We can see that. If I select average spending per claim, it's seeing, hey, that's a number there. There's a decimal number, but we know that spending, right, is spending money. So what we can also do is we can say, I want this to be shown as a currency. Now, the currencies here, we have far more options than what we would do in traditional Excel. We can choose all of these different currencies available to us if we wanted to do this. So we can do the UK pound, we could do the euro, the yen, we have the Swiss franc, think about all these that are available to us if we wanted to use that currency. In this case, obviously, I'm going to use the UK dollar because we are in the United States, but you can use the Canadian dollar as well if you'd like. So I'm going to have that, and you notice that throws in the dollar sign, and it'll automatically change our decimal places to 2 as well. So that's set up, ready to go. We're good to go with those 2 measures. And so the next thing we're going to do is just create some more visuals here to create our report, right? To populate this report to really tell the story of everything we want to see. Okay, so for these, the next one is I'm going to create a bar chart, a clustered bar chart. Okay, and for this clustered bar chart, I'll put it right here. I'm going to pull that right there. Okay, and I'm going to populate this with a couple options here. So I want to go ahead and pull from our hospitals table. I'm going to do state and city-state. Okay, so we're now creating a bit of a hierarchy as well, so we can click in and drill down into not just the state, but the city-state in there. We can set up a quick little one. And then in values, what I'll do is I'll do our average spending per claim measure that we just created. And so now we can see for each state, the average spending per claim, Nevada has the most spending. You hover over, we can see that number right there. If I wanted to, in my format, I can add in a data label. And so for that data label, it now gives me that total here. So it's just a quick little blurb there. And I can choose for this data label I can choose the display unit. I can choose none for that one as well. So everything's set up proper there. The same way we saw the others. Things are looking pretty good. Okay, we can do that, right? We can have everything set up for us. So now what the next thing is, let's keep making more visuals, right? And because we already said this average spending measure, we made it an average, we made it a currency, I don't have to go in and format those every single time I drop them into a visual. That same format is going to showcase across the board for every visual, which is another great reason why we want to create calculated measures, because we get to decide right away what we want. All right, so another visual we can create is a map visual. So I'm going to throw in a map right in the middle here. And for this map, I'm going to make this really big. Okay, and for that map, what I want to do is I'm going to put in our city, state in our location. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put our average spending in our size there. Okay, so what you'll see is on our map, you should see the larger the bubble, the more spending. But we have a problem with this map. We're only seeing 3 cities, right? We see, in this case, Niagara Falls, Kankakee, Illinois, I probably butchered that, and Mount Vernon, Illinois. Right? And so the problem is Power BI is a little confused because the city-state column that we chose, if I select it right now, our data category right now is uncategorized. Power BI doesn't know what city-state means that we created. Remember, we created that one. So what we need to do is we need to come in here and we need to say what type of category our city-state is actually going to be. And in this case, we're going to select a place. It sounds a little strange there, but once we do that, we can see that now we have everything ready to go. And so we can hover over and we can see all the different city-states and the average spending per claim in that specific city. If I select, say, Nevada, notice I now only see the data for Nevada. Or if I go to Texas, I can only see the city-states in Texas. We have that little bit of cross-filtering that occurring there, and I can click away. Now notice it's not perfect. We do have some issues there because we're using state abbreviations. So we see Lebanon, New Hampshire thrown into Lebanon, the country. That's because we're using the NH instead of the actual full word New Hampshire. If we did that, then we would be able to we'd see everything a little bit easier. I'm going to take my face out of there. I think a couple of you in the chat there say Kankakee. Oh, I saw that. There you go. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm going to get my face out of the way so everybody can see. I want to thank Anthony for coming in with a whiteboard to tell me that. And so now the next thing we want to do is we're going to insert a slicer. Okay. In Power BI, we have all these amazing custom visuals, custom slicers, custom things that we can import into our reports to be able to leverage. In this case, I'm going to actually come in and I'm going to insert one really quick to showcase one of the ones that I really like a lot called the chiclet slicer. In order to do that, I came over and select get more visuals here, my little ellipses there. Get more visuals, and I now have a pop-up to the Power BI visuals at our app source sites that I mentioned earlier today. And this gives you kind of the same view of like the Microsoft Store. Okay, so if you're familiar with that, you're going to see this. And then you can see all of the different custom visuals available to us here in Power BI. Okay, and so anything with this little blue ribbon there tells you it's Power BI certified. So that means that it's passed all the tests and things from Power BI team at Microsoft to be able to be certified. I will say some organizations don't let you use ones that aren't certified, so check with your company for that. But we have a lot of really good ones. The one we want to choose again is the chiclet slicer. And for the chiclet slicer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that one. And notice it's Power BI certified because it's a Microsoft product, by the way. And then I'm going to choose to add it. And it's really simple, really fast. If I just go ahead and add that one, what you'll notice is I now have imported a visual. And now for you, if you're wanting to see all the other visuals, just go ahead and browse through all the custom visuals there at the App Source site there to be able to see everything available to you to be able to pull in. There's a lot of really cool ones there to pull in. And then once it's there, I can see there's my chiclet slicer. It's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead, click away from my visuals in the background and add in my chiclet slicer. And I'm going to put it all the way over here. Okay, I'm going to add it in right there. And so now for my chiclet slicer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually drop in my claim type on there. So now I can filter down all this data by claim type as well. And for this, to edit this visual a little bit better, I'm going to come over and format again. And in my general dropdown, I'm going to make sure our orientation is vertical, but I'm going to change the amount of columns I have from 3 to 1. And when I do that, now we have just a nicer feel, okay, for this. And then from that, what I also want to do is I'm going to come into our chiclets here, our text size, make sure that's good. There's our 10 point. What I want to do is I'm going to pump this up from 28. I'm going to make it all the way to 80. And notice it fits pretty good into this little slot here. Now, you might say, well, how is this different than a regular slicer? Well, the one difference between a chiclet slicer and the generic slicer we have here in Power BI is, one, it looks nicer. You have a little bit more of like a pill feel, and you can do multi-select a lot easier. And notice how if I select the home health agency, I'm now seeing our measures here that are going to be filtered down, okay, by average spending, total claims. I can then do it by, you can see this other chart here has been filtered down too. Now Massachusetts has the most spending for home health agency. If I go to like inpatient and deselect, I can see Nevada once again. You can choose that, and then I can choose in Nevada again. And I can go there. If I wanted to drill down, okay, in Nevada, if I'll select here, I select this single down arrow, and then I click Nevada. I can now see all of the cities inside of Nevada as well. So another great feature here, a drill down feature that allows us just to simply see the data just at a better level. Nice and neat. Now, one of the other things we have here in Power BI is we have the option here, if you come into view, to set up a theme. Now, what the theme allows us to do is to really change the way the report looks, change the way the color scheme, the font, all these other options here, how they look in order for us to be able just to make it just feel better for us inside our organization. So we have a couple just generic themes here in Power BI available to us. One of them that I like to point out is the colorblind safe theme. So anybody you may know that is colorblind, I think the stat is like 8% of all men. Like all men are colorblind. So if you have somebody in your organization that might be colorblind, you might not know it or not, you can do that. And it changes out the theme there to change the colors to make it a little bit easier for them. Okay, to be able to see the data better in a different way. What you can also do is you can create your own theme. Right? You can customize your own theme to change this up however you want. Or you can pull in themes from a themes gallery that have been on the Power BI at a website there for our app source. You can pull in the themes gallery to get more. What you can also do is if somebody creates a custom theme, you can actually import that theme. If they share it with you, you can import that file and see all the color schemes and everything for you. I see a lot of organizations that, hey, we have our own font, we have our own colors, we have our own style. We want to use those in every report. So they create a theme with those, and you can bring those in for each report you do. So I'm going to go ahead and select Browse for Themes because I actually created a theme for us today, our Medicare claims theme here. I'm going to open that up. And for this one, I just chose some other colors, right? So now I have like a more of a golden yellow color. You see our font color is a little bit different. Things are just, I just kind of pick things along the way that I wanted to see. And so we can go ahead and choose different things here. I'm going to go ahead and see Montana there, okay, an outpatient. We can see total claims filed 33, okay, in that 6-month period from July to December of 2020. Average spending per claim, 461. So now we get a little bit more just knowledge of the data that we're working with. This helps us make better decisions, right? That's the whole point of understanding your business intelligence. So we can make better decisions about the data, about what we are doing, so we can either make more money or just have some type of change, right? We want to tell a story with our data to do something in the end, not just for the sake of having it. All right, so we are ready for our last step here. We are going to go ahead and publish this out to the Power BI service. And then from there, we'll go in full circle, bring it back into Excel. So in order to publish this out to the Power BI service, what I'm going to do is come to our Home tab. I'm going to make sure first, actually before I do this, I'm going to save this, right? I'm going to make sure I save as. I'm going to go ahead and I'll put this, and I'll call this our Medicare claims in 2020. Okay, and I'll save it to the same location of the others. Okay, save it there. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit publish. When I select publish, okay, what I now need to do is go ahead and choose where I'm going to publish this report. And where you do this, somewhere called a workspace. Now, a workspace, if you want to think of it as most basic term, is a landing location. It's a spot, right? It's a storage unit to save not just the report visuals, the report itself, but also the data set that populates those report visuals. So every time you publish one out, you get two things that go into the workspace together. Now, everybody has a My Workspace, every single one of us. If you have a pro or a premium license, you also have the opportunity to create your own workspaces that you can share from. You cannot share from your My Workspace. It's only for, it's a dev location. It's a sandbox, if you will, to be able to use. So in this case, you can just use your My Workspace. For me, I actually created a workspace because you can see I have quite a few, and I delete these like every month. I created a workspace just for our event right now, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and point this Power BI report to that. And so now what is happening is now we're taking a package, this entire report and the data set, and publishing it out to the Power BI service at powerbi.com and that specific workspace. And so what I can do is go ahead and open it up online, and it's going to pop up. Of course, it always pops up on another screen when I do these. And there it is. Okay, I'm now at powerbi.com, okay, app.powerbi.com, and I can see everything inside of my workspace. I still have, notice, it takes a snapshot of the current location of what I've clicked on. I still have the ability to change this. Maybe if I want to look at hospice, and I don't want to look at Montana anymore, and I want to look at, say, Florida. Now I see everything in Florida, and here I am up in Jacksonville. Okay, Middleburg's right there, Orange Park. There's Jack's Beach. You can see we're looking at just that location there. And if I click on, say, one location on my map, notice I'm now hyper-focused on that as well. So it gives me just more information that we're looking at, but all here at our workspace. Now for our workspace here, we're not going to go super deep into the workspaces and reports here for the sake of this conversation, but just to give a general lay of the land of what we're looking at. Here on the report, this is the report in our workspace, we have a bunch of options that we can take. We can, under File here, download the file. We can manage permissions to our report and the workspace. We can embed this in SharePoint or in a website. We can also export this to PowerPoint and PDF. We are going to do the actual analyze in Excel here in a moment. We can share this out with others and chat about it in Teams and actually have this report in a Teams chat and talk about it from there. We can have an email subscription to it every single day or week, whatever. We get an email to a link to this. We can edit this and add more visuals or to take away visuals. Or we can also see the lineage view, which is one thing I really like to show because the lineage view is awesome to tell. What this tells me is how this final report got here. We have our sources, we have our data set, we have our report. Okay, so again, this is our sources. We have our data set that we worked with. This is our model, right? Then we have our report. And if we wanted to, next we would build a dashboard. And a dashboard is essentially a bulletin board, a cork board where we can pin visuals and images to that allow us to see multiple visuals from multiple reports if we want. And then from there after that, we have an option if you are using anything but your My Workspace, your Power BI app, right? Where you can choose to create an app right there. There is your full lineage from source to very final product inside of a workspace. You can only have one app per workspace. but you need to make sure you have either a pro or a premium license to even get to that point as well. Okay, so what we want to focus on for this conversation is how we can then take everything we have here in Power BI, and I'll go back to our report there, all of the work we've done, and then go back into Excel. Leverage everything here, go back into Excel and see how we can build from that even further, especially for those of us that we like Excel, we're comfortable in Excel. I want us to hold on to that for a little bit. So what I can do is if I come and select the actual workspace itself, you'll notice here we have our list of workspaces in the far left bottom here. I'm going to select the workspace. Here we have in our options here, we have our report and our data set. On our data set, we have our options to do our data refresh as well. Right now I can do a manual refresh. Right now, refresh all of it, go back to the source, give me the most important, the most up-to-date data, go through all the transform processes in Power Query. Everything in the report visual will now be changed and I can see it immediately. Or I can do a scheduled refresh, where if I hit scheduled refresh, I can choose to do a scheduled refresh on that data however I want to see it. Now, if I have a pro license, I can do 8 scheduled refreshes per day per data set. 8 per day per data set. If I have a premium license, which is much more costly, I can do 48 refreshes per day per data set. So keep that in mind if you want to go down that road as well. And so it's really easy. You could say, I want to add a time. I want to say, maybe I want to do a refresh every, maybe like 6:30 before everybody gets in the office every day or looks at their reports, and just add more along the way if you want to have them. And you can consistently have more and more refreshes to keep your data up to date there here in the workspace. So there's a good option. All right, I'm going to go back for a moment. Here we're back to our workspace. What I want to do is I'm going to select our data set. And here on our data set, what I want to do is I want to take the data in our data set, the model, and be able to put it back into Excel. Now, in order to do that, first I need to make sure I have up here on the far right corner, I think it's like right above my head here in this picture, we have our little download icon here. Select that. And with that download icon, I want you to go ahead and select Analyze in Excel Updates. Because with that allows you to go ahead and download Analyze in Excel. It allows you to get the newest version of it if you've already done it or the first time. And so I'll go ahead and I'll do it real fast. I've done this multiple times, so I'm just going to put this into my downloads here. It's going to replace it. And that allows us to go ahead and run our Analyze in Excel updates. And mine pops up on another screen there. And I'm going to do a repair, just repair anything that might have gone wrong. I'll do a quick install. You'll notice how fast it is too. And I'm done. Once that's complete, I now can select this option here to analyze this data set in Excel, to bring it back into Excel where I first started. And I can build out pivot tables and pivot charts and whatever I might need on this data set, all back out. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and select Analyze in Excel. And what it's gonna do is gonna create an Excel file. I need to say, well, where do I want to have it? I'm gonna go ahead and put it inside our folder here. I'm gonna hit save. And then once it's done, I'm gonna just open it. Open it right away. And so once I open it and enable editing, and there it is, content. You notice I've done this a few times. I know where it's gonna pop up. I can now create my pivot tables, pivot charts, whatever I might want to see here back in Excel. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just make some here in Excel to kind of go do that full circle once again to really get everything we want to see in the format that we like. All right, so for our pivot table, here we have our pivot table fields. Okay, this is the same thing we saw earlier, but now we're automatically connecting. Everything's done. So here, let's say for our pivot table, we want to see, let's come over here and do state and city state. Let's see if we can reproduce some of our visuals from Power BI. We have state and city state, a little bit of a hierarchy there. I'm gonna just collapse these real quick, collapse the entire field. And then what I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna take one of our measures here and I will do, let's do average spending per claim. Okay, we'll do that measure there. And so what you'll notice here, by the way, when you do anything from a data model here, you have two different sets of options here for your selections here. We first have all of our tables. Okay, these are our dimension tables. These are the tables that we're pulling in. okay, how we want to see the data. We also have our measures, okay. You'll notice it has a little bit of a sigma there. That tells you we have a measure. These measures that are put there are the ones that are created using DAX. We created those either using DAX or when we were earlier back using the data model, creating our pivot table first. Okay, so you see the difference between them. Okay, you'll just know you cannot take any of these and add them to values. Okay, the values can only be measures, any type of aggregation. So keep that in mind as you're pulling through. Okay, so these tables cannot go there. You even get this little icon that kind of tells you what you're looking at, right? It tells you what can go in there. Just keep that in mind. And so now we have, here is our pivot table. Cool, right? That looks fine, right? It's something we can easily do. Let's say we want to, I have an idea. Let's say we want to see one of those card visuals again. Remember we had that card visual in Power BI that showed total claims, like all total claims that were filed for each state or whatever we selected on. I want to see that. But you know here in Excel, we don't have like a card visual. But what we can do is we can leverage the data model to actually bring that in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select any cell here. Say I'm in F4 right now. I'm going to go ahead and call this my total claims. I'm just going to give myself a just the title there. Okay, I'll expand that real quick. Okay, and then for G4, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula here to call out to the Power BI data set to be able to populate and bring in that card visual, use that measure we did before to populate in the cell. And we're going to use a cube value formula. And what a cube value formula does, if I just start typing in, it returns that aggregated value from the cube. The cube, the data model, right? And if you have a background in T-SQL, SSIS, or any of those, you can, you know a little bit about the cube. You can see it's the data model we're presenting, we're going to be pulling into here. That was automatically created with Power BI. That's one of the great things. It's automatically created for us. We don't have to create the cube. It's done. I'm going to hit tab. And so now I need to describe the connection. Okay, here's our little IntelliSense tells me what I need to have. In order to grab the connection, I'm going to use double quotes here. And once I do that, you can see that I have only one connection right now to be able to have everything ready to go for us here. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and hit tab to go ahead and do that. All right. And so we now have our connection. I'm going to close that out with double quotes and then hit a comma. Now for the commas, now saying, okay, what do we want to bring in? Okay, what is the next expression that we want to see? I'm going to use another double quote to call it to the cube. And so you'll see that we're now going to populate our items in here. Okay, what do I want to see? Well, in this case, I want to see my measures. Right? I want to see the measure I created. So I'm going to scroll down there and select measures. And I'm going to hit tab. Now, which measure, if I hit a decimal there, which measure do I want to see? Well, I want to use our total claims filed measure. So I'm going to go down and select that one. And so now I can close that out with the parentheses, the double quotes, excuse me, and a parentheses. And if I select anywhere outside, you will now see that as it populates, I can now see our total claims filed 52,731. To verify that that's back the same thing we saw in Power BI, let's just go to our Power BI report. We can close this. I'll deselect our outpatient. Okay, we'll go up a level here. Total claims filed, 52,731. There we have it. That's exactly what we want. We want that verification. We want to see that same value there. So now we can see, similar to what we had in Power BI, back here in Excel. Okay, cool. That's a cool thing to do, right? That's nice to have. Well, let's say we want to do an additional feature. Let's say we want to have a slicer. We want to be able to slice down by maybe like claim type. And so we want to see average spending per state for each claim for maybe for inpatient or for hospice. And then we also want to see this number also dynamically change as well. Similar to what we had back in Power BI. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to select a place and I'm going to insert in a slicer. Okay. Now for this slicer, what we need to say is, okay, where are we going to get the data from, right? Which connection are we going to use? I'm going to use our cube. Okay. Right here. I'm going to hit open for that. And so now for our slicer, I need to say, okay, which column here are we going to be using as the slicer? In this case, I'm going to use our claim type and then hit OK. And so now we can see our slicer right there. Okay? And if we select one item, say carrier, it should filter down our table, but we have a problem. And if you've used slicers before, you're probably well aware of how to fix this, but our problem is they're not connected, right? We haven't established that report connection here in order for the slicer to communicate with our table and with our measure that we just brought in. So luckily, there's a quick fix for that. Okay, if I right click on the slicer itself, what I can do is I can come into report connections, and now I can just say, yeah, I want the slicer to work with the pivot table. And now I can hit OK. And what you'll see is, oh, there it is. We've now gone through, and now we can have, I select each moment, each option here, things are now dynamically changing. Looks good. We still have another issue. This measure here that we created before, it's still giving us the total of everything. What I want is I want to select carrier. Not only do I want it to slice down here for our pivot table, but I want this to show how many total claims for the carrier as well too, or for outpatient or hospice as well. There's a quick little fix for that. What we can do is we can come in here, we can select that cube value formula, and when we select the cube value formula, we just need to add in an additional field. Over here, right before our closing parentheses, if we just put in a comma, okay, and with that comma just start typing in slicer, what you'll notice is it pops up for us. Hit tab, and there it is. So now we want this to work with the claim slicer that we already have. If I click away, aha, now that's filtered down too. So it's a really nice little way to be able to identify all these different items here. We can bring everything back into Excel that we maybe, we like in Power BI. I'll be honest, right? It's a little bit faster, a little bit easier in Power BI. But if you're still holding on to Excel and you're still like, look, I like everything Power BI has to offer, but I do a lot in Excel. I want to be able to use some of those features. Here's how we can use both Power BI and Excel together to be able to really get to the final solution that we want to see, to get to that final product that we know we absolutely want. And so things are looking good, right? We have everything in here. If we wanted to add in, say, a pivot chart, we could do that too, right? We can come into insert. We can come over here to pivot chart. Let's see, where is our pivot chart? There it is, pivot chart, choose a pivot chart, okay? What are we gonna pull from, okay? I'm going to pull from an external data source. And the connection that we're going to choose is from our cube, right, that we brought in from Power BI. There it is. I'm going to open that. I can do it on the existing worksheet here. And eventually, it'll populate through. And I'll get my face out of the way because I can hear people screaming at me to get out of the way. I can feel it, not hear it, maybe my spidey senses. And so now I can, if I wanted to, I can just populate a pivot chart. Maybe I want to see total claims filed here, and I can do it by claim type. And I can see that, right? And I can go ahead and get rid of this total because we don't really need the legend there. And so I can see everything there as well. And we notice, and this is a weird little data set, it's the same, and this is accurate, it's just a weird way that they're all the same. If I go through these slicers, you'll notice that they're all total claims. It's a strange little model here, but we can see that that's all now being populated. And we can see that there. And so if we want this to filter down as well, right click, report connections, add in the pivot chart there. Okay, one or more slicers, that's okay. We have to change the OLAP there. We'll have to come in through here and change that later on, but we'll have the ability to go ahead and add in data for that. Pretty easy. Now, I will say, for some of us that are like, wow, do I have to go through the whole process? Do I need to go through this entire stage step by step from Excel to Power BI, or just all in Power BI, publish out and come back through this to be able to do this? The answer is no. There's actually a fast way to do this. If I come in here and open up a new tab at the bottom, what I can do is, if you come into insert, if you want to just do a pivot table from a Power BI report, you can just do it from a Power BI report. You can just say straight away, I know someone in my organization, or I have one in one of my workspaces that I want to leverage, just choose from Power BI. And again, I'll get my face out of the way here. You'll see all the different data sets we have options to pull in. Any one of them. Okay, you can pull in a lot of these. I'll pull in one from, let's say, one of the public classes I teach, the Modern Excel Analyst class in a day. And you can now pull in maybe, and bring in that here. You don't have to connect that to it. It's already there as long as you're logged in and that single sign-on, using your Azure Active Directory sign-in. You can then pull in and populate all these other ones from any Power BI data set that you are currently connected to. It makes it just a nice way of being able to do all this, to be able to see everything along the way. So it's a really quick, really easy way to populate everything, to be able to showcase everything as we pull through. All right, so last phase. In our last 10 minutes, 15 minutes together, what I want to do is I want to save this. And then I want to bring this report with these visuals that I just created into Power BI. I want to go back the other way too. I want to take all these visuals and put it to the Power BI service just as I did my Power BI report. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a quick save. There it is. And so now what I can do is if I close this out, I'm going to come back into PowerBI.com, Power BI service. I'm going to go to my workspace, select the workspace itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit new. And when I select new, I have a few options here. I can create a new report based on any data set. So I'll just select here. Any data set on any workspace, by the way, which is a cool thing. That's a new feature. So if I have 17 different workspaces, I can choose to build a report here from a different workspace if I want. So that's another cool thing we can do. I can have a paginated report. We can do scorecards. I can build a dashboard from here, which we'll do a quick little one. I have a data set, a data flow, which is like the Power Query editor in the cloud, a streaming data set, but I can also at the bottom here, upload a file. And if I choose upload a file, I can then choose what type of file do I want to have. Well, right now, the file I just saved is on my device, right? It's a local file. Where I'm going to go to here is inside of our folder there. I'm going to choose that Medicare claims one that we just saved and closed. And if I open that up, I'm going to choose here to upload it right here into Power BI. And there it is. There it is right there. I can go to the workbook. I can select it here. And what I can see, I'm going to get a warning here, by the way. It happens every time. Okay, about the query refresh and the data. You can just hit enable them. Look what I get to see. Our pivot table, pivot chart, our measure, and our filter, and our slicer. It's all here. It's in the same place. So it's now we can do the same thing. We've gone full circle once again, bringing everything back here into Power BI service, which is what we want, right? We want to be able to share this out in a much easier way. No longer do I need to email out that file. I don't have to send it to people. I just drop it in here. And so now what I can do is I can say, you know what? I'm going to pin this. I want to create a dashboard to allow maybe my boss or others on my team on our weekly or a monthly meeting that we all have to kind of go together and talk about what we're doing, right? I want everybody to see this. So if I come over here in the top right, I can pin this, okay? And what I can do is I'll just choose one here. I'm going to pin this to a dashboard, okay? And so right now, we don't have any dashboards in our workspace. I'm just going to create one for our Learn with Nerds dashboard. And I'm going to pin that visual right there. Okay, that's only going to give me that. I want to take the whole thing because there it is. I want to pin that one, the whole thing. There we go. So Learn with the Nerds dash. If I can spell, there we go. I'm going to pin it. All right, so now I pinned it to a dashboard. I'm like, well, what does that look like? I want to see it. Let's go ahead and let's pin some other visuals from our other report, and I'll showcase what that looks like here. Go back to my workspace. Okay, you can see our dashboard's created. We have another thing created there. I'm going to come into our report here. And you know what? I'm going to pin a couple of these visuals. I'm going to go back up. I'm going to get out of our little drill down here for hospice. I'm going to get out of here. Okay, let me see. I'm going to go back up. Why isn't it let me go back up? Let's see. Let's see, maybe it's on our visual here. Nope, I'm zooming the wrong way. And there it is. It should be giving me that. There it goes. I'm not sure why. There it goes. Finally, a little bit of a bug there. And so maybe I want to see this whole thing, okay, this entire one. Okay, I can take this. If I hover over it, you can hardly see it because they're kind of tucked in. I can choose in the far right corner here, I can choose to pin a specific item. Now, because of the background I have, it's a little tough to see, but you can see that there. And I'm going to choose to pin our average spending. Or if I then want to say, I want to pin out this map too, I can take that and I want to pin that to our dashboard. And I can then say, you know what, actually, I like those, but I want the whole thing. I want the whole report page itself. If I come over to these ellipses, I can pin the entire thing and doing something called a live pin and see all of it. And so now I've just gone and picked some random ones here. If I go to that dashboard, I can see all of those visuals right there, all set up. And now here on the dashboard, I can actually choose to move them around. I can say, you know what, I want some of these on the side here. I want to move them in different areas. Maybe I want my live pin to be up there. I can see how things are looking here and set up all of these. And now if I select one of these visuals, I then get to jump back to wherever it was created. And so now I'm going to come back into our Excel file here once it finally loads through. It looks like there it is. And it jumps in. So what a dashboard is a great place for us to be able to look at and leverage everything that we've put together inside of a workspace. And what we can do with our dashboards is we can have multiple different dashboards inside of a workspace. We can have 10, 15 if we want. And we can update those dashboards, pin, unpin tiles as we want to really understand, you know, what we want to showcase. And then if we're like, okay, dashboard's cool, we like that, but what's this lasting thing? I want everybody to see everything inside of our workspace here. What we can create is we can create an app. And if we go ahead and select app, we can just do, here's our demo here. Just you have to create a description here. Go through the process here. I'm not going to go through all of it. You could change the color scheme if you want. Maybe there's our green for Excel. Select publish app. We can have this final resting place here for everything we've then created thus far. We have our dashboard with all of our tiles, okay, everything we've pinned. We have our reports, our Power BI report. We have our Excel report, our workbook that we had. And we can see everything in this one. It's just a nice and neat place. And one of the great things about a Power BI app is there's a mobile feature. You can download it for your phone. Either you have an Android, an Apple, or Windows phone or anything. All you need to do is get the app from your app store, download it, and you can now, if you log in, you can see all of this. And so especially on the dashboard here, one of the great things we can do is we can ask a question about our data using the Q&A. Okay, and you see we have a couple different suggestions here. What if I want to see total claims by state as, let's do a matrix. And that shows it right there. And I can see all that. And it also even has a little bit of a chart inside of it. Or if I want to do total claims by, instead of state, I can choose this by city as matrix. Now I have the same thing. And so we have some conditional formatting already set up for us. We have a way to just now ask questions in real language here about our data to be able to populate everything in here ready to go for us. Super easy, super nice. We don't really have to worry about it. It's all done for us. And so everything we've done today, coming from starting with our demos, just looking at the Power Query Editor, doing some basic transforms, really looking at our data in just this general format here, getting everything done. We then took it from the Power Query Editor, created our data model. From that data model, we realized we can do some connections between the two tables. We can really have those relationships set up. We can export it into Power BI, add some amazing visuals that exist inside of Power BI that allow us to leverage what Power BI offers us. Then we can create that report, publish it out, and do so many things with it here on the Power BI service. Go back into Excel if we want, some cube values or pivot tables, pivot charts. Come back here and create our dashboards, our app, really have this full long-term solution, not just for us, but for our entire organization. And often I get the question, hey, okay, now I know all this. What do I use? Like, do I only use Power BI now? Because everything we did today in Excel, we can do in Power BI, in the Power Query Editor. We have that option. We have that opportunity to do that, right? We can pull in our Power BI report. And here in our Power BI report, if we go to Home, we select Transform Data. Guess what we get? we get the Power Query Editor. We get everything that we've done today. So we have all those options here in Power BI. What do I do? Which one do I choose? Well, the answer is both. All right? It's not one or the other. It's both together. It's if you want something done ad hoc today, tomorrow, this week, I need something quick, I need to get it done. Excel's probably your answer, right? That's a quick little solution for you. But if you want a long-term solution for business intelligence that you can come back to over and over and over, update all the time, have this beautiful array of different visuals and tables and things that you want to see, Power BI is your solution. Power BI is the way to go because it gives you that opportunity to really make this work for you. And because you have the Power BI service, you have your dashboards, you have your app, you can use this as an amazing feature for the entire team or the entire organization to be able to leverage wherever they are, on the go if they need. Here, all we can work together. We can do this collaboratively. We can have everything ready for us to be able to go right away at our fingertips. So I do want to thank you all for joining me today, hanging out with me, taking this journey from Excel into Power BI, and to really understand some of the amazing features that exist in both Power BI and Excel, the Power Query Editor, really our PowerPivot, our data model, and how we can leverage all the existing knowledge base that we all have, that we're starting with, that you've worked so hard to get. You can leverage that and to really take your skill set and progress. You can go forward with it. You can start to learn and understand Power BI and really get it and let it do all the work for you. I do want to remind everybody that because you are a participant here today, you are going to be given access to a 50% off our on-demand learning platform. So go ahead and check that out. It's an amazing place. We have new videos coming out, just about every month. We are updating a lot of our courses as well. So you'll see some of the newer features as well, particularly with Power BI. So please look forward to that. And again, it's going to be an amazing thing that we have. We have more and more courses coming out. It's a really cool place for us to have. Again, thank you everybody for joining me. I did see there's quite a few of us from around the world, so that is awesome to see. I absolutely look forward to seeing all of you or meeting all of you virtually or in person, if that ever happens again, and being able to connect, right? Please feel free to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, on Reddit as well, here on YouTube. We have videos all the time. I look forward again to working with every single person here and really seeing how we can build out our knowledge base here with both Excel and Power BI in the future. Well, for now, thank you.